Hey friends, tonight let's explore the quiet lessons hidden in history, the ones not found in textbooks, but in the rhythms of daily life long ago. Let's take it slow tonight. You might not make it through this. If you're still awake and still with me, maybe give that like button a gentle tap and subscribe if you'd like to come back for more sleepy wanderings. You open your eyes in the silent night, your heart beating in time with your breath echoing in the hush. The small tent by the forest's edge rustles in the soft breeze, and you know dawn is very near, the moment every samurai both respects and fears. The first light of day can reveal 100 hidden figures, every sword quietly stowed, every arrow poised to strike the moment the sky brightens. Historical records note that Tokugawa samurai often stayed awake through the night to stand guard before sunrise, believing that ninja and assassins favored the dawn's early mist for their deadly strikes. In Hattori Hanzo Master Ninja, it's estimated that over 30% of failed assassination attempts happened because enemies sensed danger just as daybreak approached. You sit up quietly, your hand sliding to the katana at your side. The blade shimmers in the darkness, a curious detail that modern samurai dramas often overlook. In reality, these swords were rarely polished to a mirror shine. Instead, they were wiped with a damp tea-soaked cloth and then stored in lacquered wooden scabbards. The faint, earthy scent and slight moisture actually protected the steel from rust during damp, misty nights in the forest. You hold your breath, listening to the rustle of leaves, wind sighing through bamboo groves, and the faint snap of a twig. This is not merely a physical test, but a trial of the mind. Bushido teaches that true steel of spirit is not numbness, but the ability to remain calm amid chaos. Modern military psychologists still debate whether samurai really practiced inner silence magen, or if that's a romantic legend. You swallow as the fog begins to lift, revealing toppled tree trunks. A lone, battered shoe lies on the trail, evidence that someone unexpected passed this way. Such mundane details often vanish from grand histories. The would-be attacker wasn't always a cunning ninja, but sometimes just a farmer lost in the dark. Inspecting that single shoe and studying the pattern of mud can help you trace its owner's origin, a simple yet effective survival skill. Dawn's pale light spreads in soft pink across the canopy, and you wonder, does the fear of dawn come from strategy or superstition? Military historians split into two camps. One argues that samurai made shrewd tactical decisions, using the longest darkness to set up defenses against ambush. The other insists that spiritual beliefs dominated. They thought the souls of the dead couldn't move on until daylight and might return to haunt the living. You find yourself asking, where exactly is the line between strategic planning and mystical faith? And now, as the first rays touch the forest floor, you draw a deep breath, readying yourself for the night's most crucial moment, stepping out of darkness to face the light that heralds both danger and possibility. You slip quietly from the tent as the first pale glow crests the horizon mist, drifting through bamboo stalks like phantom silhouettes. The world feels suspended between night and day, a liminal moment that samurai call Yugure, the dawn's dusk. You walk with measured steps, senses sharpened by darkness, attuned to every distant rustle and muted footfall. In that deep hush, you remember that ninja shadowy operatives trained in stealth and sabotage often struck at the silent dawn when birds had yet to sing and watchmen's eyes blurred with sleep. Common belief holds that ninja carried tiny bells on their belts fashioned from deer antler to mask their approach with soft jingles that blended into the ambient whisper of the forest. You imagine the faint plink of those bells so subtle that only the most vigilant ear would catch them. Historical accounts from mid-Edo period scrolls describe incidents where border guards mistook those jingles for fallen droplets of dew. One report notes a bell's tone measured at only 200 hertz, lower than most human footsteps, making it nearly impossible to distinguish from sap dripping off bamboo leaves. You pause by a moss-covered stump, imagining a ninja stepping through the very droplets you now see glimmering in the dawn light. Your hand brushes the leather hilt of your wakizashi. The shorter blade, often kept closer at hand than the katana, served as a backup when surprise was essential. Records show that some samurai wielded a second sword, solely for parrying ambush strikes at daybreak. This lifesaver blade was sometimes coated with a thin layer of resin, not for show but to prevent rust in the damp morning air, a small practical quirk rooted in necessity rather than ceremony. You survey the thinning fog, catching sight of a narrow path where the dew has been disturbed. Footprints appear, 2 sets, one wide, and booted the other light, and almost slipper-like. Could this be the fabled Ashiato footsteps, painstakingly altered with wooden sandals tied to soles? By stretching your toes into the waterlogged ground, you might recreate such prints. You crouch moist earth, giving way beneath your fingers, and compare the impressions to your own sandals. The wider set seems to match a waraji, while the smaller, irregular ones hint at a covert operator's improvisation. As the sky brightens, you strain to catch other subtle signs. A stray arrow lies half hidden beneath a fern, its tip still gleaming with morning dew. A common arrowhead of the time was barbed rather than smooth, designed to lodge and tear. But these tiny darts Kodaruma were smooth and lighter, fired from straw blowguns or short bamboo tubes. They had no barbs, traveling only a few dozen meters, but delivered enough force to silence an opponent before word could spread. You pick up the hollow bamboo slip. Its cool interior sends a shiver through your palm. You wonder who fired it and whether their target still lies hidden among the trees. You recall that samurai often lit takigi fires at tree bases, creating slow-burning braziers to shower sparks into the night sky, signals of safety or danger, depending on their color. A blue-green flame meant enemy sighted, while a pale orange one declared safe passage. Reports from the siege of Osaka note that ninja disrupted these signals, extinguishing embers and replacing them with smoldering red coals that flickered like warnings, throwing entire watch patrols into confusion. The subtle color shifts mattered. Orange sparks danced apart from embers, while red coals glowed steadily, mimicking dying fires. You cross a small clearing where sedge grass glistens in neat rows planted by farmers and forgotten by raiders. The parallel lines serve as a low-grade alarm system. Anyone walking between them must step on stalks stiff enough to snap their crisp crack, audible in the still air. You lift a blade of grass and bend it, observing the tension and listening for that sharp report. Even the quietest footstep would betray itself here, a testament to villagers' ingenuity in repurposing simple botany for night security. Ahead, you make out the silhouette of a guard tower. 2 watchmen lean against the wooden rail, eyes heavy with the last throes of sleep. The weaker eye tends to close, leaving only a slit between lids, a deadly flaw samurai learned to exploit. You recall stories of expert swordsmen catching the moment when a warrior's gaze flickered shut, striking in the fraction of a breath it takes for an eyelid to descend. In training, you practiced listening, with your eyes focusing on chest movements and subtle muscle twitches rather than direct gaze. You steady your own lashes and watch the guard shallow rise and fall as rhythmic as any sleeping breath. Your heart beats slower as you consider the fine line between predator and protector. You imagine a ninja scaling the tower's rough-hewn ladder cedar bark, slipping beneath cloth-wrapped feet, each step muffled. You can almost feel their weight shifting as they peer over the edge, scanning for soft targets, sauna-goers emerging from hot steam, officials rising from sake-fueled slumber wives, seeking morning water. The element of surprise was absolute, leaving no clue beyond a whisper and a vanished silhouette. The morning sky continues to brighten blue, spilling across the east. You breathe in the cool air filled with wood smoke from distant hearths and the tang of pine resin. It's a reminder that dawn, for all its hazards, also brings renewal, and community markets open, prayer bells toll, villages awaken. You pocket the Kodaruma dart resolve settling in your chest. Now, as the first true light spills over the treetops, you step onto the fallen logs, moving to secure the perimeter. Today's lesson lingers. Shadows lengthen and fade with dawn, but cunning survives in the smallest details. Bell chimes, broken grass, ash-colored smoke, and the tilt of a sleeping eyebrow. You steel yourself, katana and wakizashi strapped fast, knowing that between darkness and daylight lies the silent dawn, where fear and vigilance dance an eternal duet. And in this space, you wonder, did technique or superstition guide ninja more? Did they truly trust wind-carried bells and dew-disturbed paths? Or did they simply thrive on the fear those tactics inspired? You crouch by the palisade wall as the first cool tendrils of dawn seep through the treetops. Your breath forms small clouds in the still air, and every muscle in your body remains alert, even as the world seems to hold its breath. This is the sacred duty of the Night Watch Yojo, a ritual passed down through centuries of samurai tradition. Historically, samurai posts rotated in shifts of 2 to 4 hours, ensuring that no sentinel fell unconscious at the most perilous hour, the pale edge between night and day. Scrolls from the mid-Muromachi period note that the Ashikaga shogunate issued strict orders never permit a single eyelid to droop before the first cock's crow, lest an enemy infiltrate the camp under cover of half-light. You feel the weight of that command as you grip your yari spear, ears pricked for even the faintest rustle. Beneath your steel armor, the layers of your kimono whisper against each other, a soft susurrus in the hush. Samurai often wore inner robes dyed in muted indigo or faded ash colors, chosen not for show, but to blend seamlessly into shadows. A quirky detail: some high-ranking households dyed their guard socks with leftover black tea leaves to eliminate any glint of white if gaiters slipped. You glance down at your tabi and confirm the charcoal tint, comforted by this subtle camouflage. The lanterns, spaced along the wall, glow with dim saffron light, each fed by fish oil wicks that sputter before settling into a steady, low flame. In your hand, you hold a small ceramic bowl of ash, used to snuff a lantern at a moment's notice without a trace of smoke. The faint, metallic tang of the oil drifts to your nose, and you dip a finger into the ash, feeling its powdery coolness. It's a reminder that every tool at your disposal is as simple as it is effective. Your ears strain for sound. In the distance, an owl hoots twice a barred owl, whose call slices through the quiet. Folk tales held that an owl's nocturnal song was an omen. The fourth hoot meant a visitor approached. The fifth, an enemy. Scholars debate whether these associations arose from careful observation of animal behavior or from superstitious whispers passed in candlelit rooms. Some argue that yokai lore exaggerated natural calls to stoke fear. Others maintain practical trackers used bird calls as early warning systems long before modern radar. You mimic the owl's low cooing hoot, once yourself listening for a response, any deviation from normal patterns. A soft scuff behind you pulls your attention to a fellow samurai in shadow. You lock eyes and nod a silent exchange that reassures you are not alone in this vigil. Nearby, a copper signaling bell hangs ready. A single ring summons reinforcements from 40 paces. 3 rings mean intruder at the gate. You admire the bell's smooth patina worn by decades of service and hands long gone. Your mind drifts to the practical debate of using bells versus drums. Some garrisons employed taiko drums at night, low, thunderous rumbles intended to unnerve intruders. But the deep vibrations sometimes startled even friendly patrols. Others preferred bells, which could be muffled in cloth to soften the tone for inside work or left clear for maximum range. You recall reading that the Takeda clan experimented with waterproof bronze bells that kept ringing even through torrential rains, a minor innovation that prevented false alarms during storms. Aurora's light cracks the sky pink as frost crystals begin to twinkle on your spear shaft. Every breath feels crisp, and you catch a whiff of pine resin carried by the breeze. This mix of wood smoke, cold air, and damp pine imbues a sense of calm vigilance. You take a slow sip from a small flask of warm sake, careful not to slosh it. The liquid spreads heat through your chest, sharpening your senses rather than dulling them. Tokugawa-era regulations allowed each guard a single cup of Kansuri-washed sake to steady nerves without impairing reflexes. As the sky brightens further, you shift your stance, heels pressing into the soft earth eyes sweeping the camp. You notice subtle signs: a straw mat rolled too tightly, a cooking pot left too close to the edge of a fire pit, small deviations from routine that betray human error. Samurai training emphasized attention to the unnoticed teaching that the mind must see what is not meant to be seen. Modern cognitive scientists call this inattentional blindness, the tendency to overlook visible details when focused on a task. Samurai deliberately trained to counter it with exercises in acute peripheral awareness. Suddenly, a soft scrape reaches your left ear. You freeze, spear raised. In the dim light, you see only the kneeling outline of a monk, a Buke messenger delivering morning orders. Relief floods you, and you tap the bell once in salute. The monk bows deeply, whispers his message, and departs as silently as he arrived. The tension eases, and you reset your position muscles, unwinding only slightly. As dawn's full light touches the treetops, you extinguish your lantern with a puff of ash plunging your corner of the wall into cool shadow. Other watchmen follow suit until only the pale sky illuminates the camp. The night watch is ending, but your mind remains sharp. You turn to your comrade and speak the question that lingers. Was the samurai's most potent defense the steel of their blades or the steel of their minds, shaped by ritual observation and belief? With the first cock's crow echoing across the courtyard, you relax your guard just enough to step down from the wall, katana sheathed, armed with both weapons and wisdom, carried through the silent hours. You step silently through the dew-slick courtyard as pale light begins to stain the sky and a hush falls over the hilltop castle. Here, the boundary between this world and the next feels razor thin. You can almost taste the cold mist on your tongue as you wander among darkened corridors, each stone pillar an ancient beam, whispering tales of lives long past. In medieval Japan, samurai believed that restless spirits yurei were strongest in the moments just before dawn. These vengeful souls, tethered by regret or unfinished duty, drifted in shadowy half-light, their forms half seen at the edge of your vision. You recall the classic tale of Lady Oiwa, a samurai's wife betrayed and murdered, whose sorrowful wails echoed through Edo's streets at first light. Her legend taught warriors that courage sometimes meant facing the living dead. Your hand drops to the hilt of your katana as you pass a narrow hallway lined with sliding paper doors. The fine rice paper appears milky in the faint glow, and you notice a single panel gently quivering. No breeze stirs here. You approach slowly, every footfall measured, and pause to listen. Behind the panel, a soft sobbing drifts out, a low, hollow sound like water dripping into an empty well. Samurai chronicles describe this phenomenon as the cry of dawn sorrow, believed to be a spirit's lament, heard only by the vigilant. You slip your wakizashi free and, using its dull edge, push the paper door aside without a tear. The room beyond is empty, save for a single tatami mat stained with an old bloodstain. A discarded hairpin lies beside it, its ornamental end carved with a faded family crest. You kneel and trace the symbol with gloved fingers, a stylized crescent moon bisected by bamboo leaves. You remember an obscure record from Kyoto, noting that this crest belonged to a samurai family whose daughter vanished on her wedding day, her body never recovered. Some claimed her spirit returned each dawn to search the corridors of her former home. A sudden chill brushes your neck so sharp it draws a gasp. You pivot, wakizashi raised, and see at the corridor's end a flicker of movement, a pale floating shape clothed in tattered white robes. You hold your breath as it glides toward your hair, draped over its face like cobwebs. In an instant, you recognize the classic iconography of a yurei white burial kimono, loose black hair and arms extended unnaturally in sorrow. Your pulse races, hands steady. Legend says that yurei appear at the moment the boundary between night and day grows thin, when incense smoke clings longest in the air and the sun's warmth has yet to chase away the chill. You remember performing a silent prayer to Jizo, the guardian of souls, invoking protection as you step forward. The spirit drifts closer, and the sobbing resumes each breath, a gale wail. You force your breathing calm, focusing your mind on the ritual discipline that has guided every blade you've drawn. Reaching into your breast pouch, you withdraw a small packet of Hojun incense, a blend of sandalwood and Japanese cypress. You hold it aloft, the dry smoke curling upward. Ancient texts instruct that the scent of cypress calms angry spirits, guiding them toward peace. You whisper a short invocation. By the grace of Amida, find rest in the light soon to come. As you exhale, you waft a gentle stream of smoke toward the yurei. Its sobbing falters and the shape quivers in the pale corridor. You keep your gaze soft, avoiding direct eye contact, Legend warns that meeting a vengeful spirit's gaze can bind you to its sorrow. Instead, you speak low, and even you are free to go. The dawn will bless you with release. The world seems to still as the spirit's shoulders shake, and for a heartbeat, you wonder if this ritual will succeed. Then, with a final echoing sigh, the Urag dissolves like mist before sunrise, leaving only the faint scent of cypress and the soft flutter of paper doors swaying. Your shoulders ache as the tension melts away, and you bow deeply to the empty corridor, a gesture of respect for the soul you have mindfully sent back to rest. You gather your swords and continue your patrol as light floods the sky. You pass through the castle's inner gate, noting how the dawn's glow softens the harsh angles of stone walls and wooden beams. Birds begin to call a welcome chorus after a night of spectral whispers, and you pause to listen. Their song feels like a promise life outlasts death, and you too carry the light of day in your heart. Before the camp fully awakens, you return to the armory, wiping your blades with quiet reverence. You recall that some samurai lacquered their sheaths in ghostly white, a testament to having confronted spirits in the gray of dawn. Others preferred the dull black of lacquer mixed with ground rice husks, believing that in utter darkness, both literal and spiritual, no shine would betray their presence. As you secure your weapons, you reflect on the haunting lesson of the night. Fear is neither enemy nor foe, but a teacher. In the still hours before dawn, you learned that courage does not banish the unknown. It meets it head-on with compassion and discipline. You step outside into the brightening courtyard, bowing your head to the rising sun. And you wonder, was the Urai's sorrow born of strategy or spirit of tactical testing, or a reminder that the greatest battles are fought within? You emerge into the courtyard just as dawn's first golden rays strike the crooked rooftops and the world hums with renewed life. The cool air carries the faint scent of rice porridge from nearby kitchens, but your focus remains on the rising mist along the castle moat. Today, you turn your attention to early morning fog, an ally and an adversary that can cloak friend and foe alike. Every samurai knows that mist holds strategic value. Records from the Nanboku Cho period describe generals using thick dawn fog to mask troop movements, shifting banners and swords like ghostly specters across the battlefield. One celebrated maneuver at the Battle of Kawanakajima involved 5,000 cavalry charging unseen through swirling mist, catching their opponents frozen with indecision. The riders later described the scene as horses emerging from the sea, a phrase still sending a shiver down your spine. You step carefully along wet flagstones, the mist swirling at your ankles like a living thing. Pausing at the bridge spanning the moat, you note how the wooden planks glisten under the haze. A clever defensive trick involved laying rice straw between slats. When damp, it sizzled softly enough to warn watchmen of approaching footsteps without revealing their own position. You crouch, sliding a hand under a plank to feel the straw's damp fibers and imagine how each hiss could buy precious seconds to prepare. A sudden cry from a guard at the north gate draws your attention. He signals with a raised spear, pointing toward the outer wall where a dark shape emerges from the fog. You knock an arrow to your yumi, an asymmetrical longbow crafted from bamboo and sinew, and take steady aim. In the low light, you make out the silhouette of a merchant cart, its horses' hooves muffled by straw matting on the moat road. Merchants often traveled before sunrise to avoid the midday heat and bandits, but they also risked misidentification as enemy spies under the fog's concealment. You lower your arrow step forward and meet the caravan at the gate. The driver, surprised by your silent arrival, bows deeply as you slide the cart aside so it may pass safely. The air fills with the welcoming scent of steamed rice and pickled plum supplies destined for the garrison's morning meal. You fingerprint the stamped seal on one wooden cask, an official crest granted to licensed traders, a Tokugawa-era regulation meant to prevent contraband from slipping through gates under cover of fog. As the cart rumbles onward, you turn back to the mist-shrouded courtyard. The fog's density shifts unpredictably, swirling into shapes that trick the eye, a tactic ninjutsu experts exploited by planting damp gunpowder smoke bombs in hidden alcoves to amplify the haze. You peer through the drifting veil, aware that shadows can form and dissolve without pattern, a constant reminder that perception is never absolute. Stepping toward the barracks, you brush dew from the tall grasses lining the path. Among the blades you spot tiny footprints, those of a barn owl, its talons leaving neat semicircles. Farmers revered these birds for hunting rodents and rice paddies, but samurai also valued their silent flight. Owl feathers, when fashioned into arrow fletchings, muted wind noise by reducing turbulence, an obscure but effective tweak passed down through generations of master fletchers. You enter the training yard where a wooden dummy stands half cloaked in mist. Today's drill involves practicing sword cuts in near zero visibility, swinging your katana blind until only the faint resistance of bamboo or flesh meets steel. This exercise hones muscle memory and trust in one's form rather than sight. You step forward and execute a swift, horizontal cut. The blade slices through vapor with a soft swish. Each repetition sharpens your mind's map of space, teaching you that the body can navigate without eyes, guided by balance and breath. A curious incident from the late Sengoku era comes to mind. A renowned swordsman once challenged his students to duels in a rice field at dawn, the mist so thick that only footprints marked the ground. Many hesitated, but one disciple, blindfolded and unfazed by the fog, bested his rivals simply by sensing motion on the wind. His name became legend not for victory, but for demonstrating that perception extends beyond vision. You pause your practice as a distant temple bell tolls, marking the third hour before sunrise. Its deep resonance cuts through the fog, serving as both spiritual summons and practical timekeeper. Early morning jikaraji bells allowed samurai to coordinate wake-ups and patrols without torches. Their hollow tones traveled farther through mist than any shouted command. You find comfort in the bell's measured cadence, a reliable anchor in the shifting haze. Turning, you make your way back to the gatehouse, where the moat's surface now reflects pale sunlight filtering through the fog. You notice tiny waves radiating from a heron's footsteps as it hunts for frogs in the shallows, another early riser adapted to dawn's concealment. You imagine the bird's patience and precision qualities any samurai would envy when venturing into uncertain terrain. As the fog thins, you pass a series of dry stone walls built with gaps just wide enough to let water run off, but too narrow for swords. In the mist's embrace, these walls became near invisible barriers, guiding or trapping the unwary. You test a gap's width with your gloved fingertip and nod, appreciating the meticulous craftsmanship that turned the castle grounds into a shifting labyrinth at dawn. Before the mist fully lifts, you climb the watchtower's narrow stairs. From this vantage, you survey the courtyard, now revealed training yards, granaries, and the meandering moat, all softened by the departing haze. In this moment, you understand why samurai revered the silent dawn, not out of fear, but out of respect for nature's power to conceal and reveal. You place a hand on the tower railing, feeling damp wood against your palm. The air warms as birdsong swells and the mist dissolves. You lean forward, drawing a steady breath, and consider the interplay of strategy and aesthetics. Was mist merely terrain to exploit, or did its ephemeral beauty shape the samurai's appreciation for impermanence and adaptability? You jot a quick note in your patrol log. How did the aesthetic appreciation of morning mist influence samurai tactics and philosophy? Then, as sunlight floods the courtyard, you descend the tower steps, ready to face the clear day with lessons learned in its fleeting fog. You emerge into the courtyard just as dawn's first golden rays strike the crooked rooftops and the world hums with renewed life. The cool air carries the faint scent of rice porridge from nearby kitchens, but your focus remains on the rising mist along the castle moat. Today you turn your attention to early morning fog, an ally and an adversary that can cloak friend and foe alike. By the Azuchi Momoyama period, samurai households followed precise guidelines for morning sustenance. They served asagayu morning rice gruel at exactly the fourth cock's crow. Its consistency, neither too thin nor too thick, it must cradle the spoon without clinging like a brick. You lift a small lacquer bowl of steaming gruel, noting its subtle swirl of millet and barley grains, an austere but balanced fare. Anecdotes from Heike Monogatari describe warriors who credited this simple meal with steadying trembling hands in battle. A quirk of the era to conserve fuel, many kitchens used leftover coals from the previous night's hearth under a shallow iron pan called a kamado. Early risers would stoke only the pan's perimeter, relying on thermal inertia to heat the gruel evenly. No roaring flames to betray one's cooking to enemies lurking beyond the gate. You peer into the pan's glowing ring and feel a soft heat under your palm, marveling at how necessity shaped this subtle culinary art. As you sip the porridge, you hear the gentle clink of ceramic bowls being set aside. Fellow samurai line up in reverent silence, each bowing slightly before their meal. The quiet companionship reinforces unity. You dine together, yet in solitary contemplation, honoring Bushido's mandate to temper individual prowess with collective harmony. Modern nutritionists note that this low-fat, high-fiber morning meal provided steady energy release essential for long hours of patrols and training, long before contemporary sports diets existed. You follow the head cook to the side table where nuka miso, rice bran miso, sits in wooden vats. Only samurai of rank tasted this savory paste at dawn. Lower retainers received simple, salted vegetables instead. The miso's complex umami, a blend of fermented rice bran soybeans and salt, was believed to awaken both palate and mind-aligning senses for the day's focus. You scoop a small dollop with a cedar paddle, noting its pale beige hue flecked with rice bran. A single taste releases a gentle salt tang and a whisper of sweetness. Just outside the kitchens, a row of stone basins holds fresh spring water for washing hands and faces. Samurai etiquette prescribed cleansing not only for hygiene, but as symbolic purification, leaving behind night's impurities before greeting daylight's responsibilities. You dip your hands into the cool water and splash it onto your face, feeling droplets cascade and collect at your collar. The chill cuts through lingering drowsiness, sharpening your awareness. A curious custom survives in old scrolls. Some clans mixed shaved ice into morning gruel during summer dawns, a contrarian luxury that cooled bodies while paradoxically heightening alertness. They called it suikamizu watermelon water. Though no melon was used, you watch as one steward shaves a chunk of ice against a metal grate, its flakes drifting into a separate bowl of porridge. The very idea seems extravagant, yet those who tasted it swore the contrast of hot and cold roused both body and spirit with electrifying clarity. From the kitchen, you carry a small plate of roasted chestnuts and dried persimmons, gifts from nearby farmers celebrating the previous autumn's harvest. These treats symbolize gratitude for the land's bounty and remind you of the samurai's dual role, warrior and steward of local villages. You nibble a chestnut, its buttery sweetness lingering on your tongue, and appreciate how this tactile pleasure anchors you to the human world beyond the battlefield. As you finish your meal, you note the time by the sunstone, its crystal edge affixed near the doorway. When sunlight strikes at a certain angle, it casts a pale golden beam across the threshold, an elegant natural clock that agrees with the kitchen's rooster calls within a minute. Scholars debate whether samurai truly trusted sunstones for precise timing, or whether such tales were later embellishments. Yet your own small beam now arcs across the stone floor, marking the moment to conclude breakfast and begin the formal inspection of arms. You stand and bow to the head cook, acknowledging his skill in sustaining samurai bodies and morale. He inclines his head, gratified by your silent respect. Carrying your empty bowl, you join the courtyard's gentle bustle pages, arranging training weapons, stable hands brushing war horses, and instructors calling students to the drill yard. The day unfolds rapidly now, yet you carry within you the calm confidence granted by a well-honored morning ritual. Before leaving the kitchen precinct, you pause to consider, the bigger picture: was this meal merely fuel? Or was it a bridge between ritual and readiness, uniting tradition, community, and bodily resilience? The answer lingers as you stride toward the training field, your senses sharpened, hunger sated, and spirit aligned for the duties of daylight. You kneel on the dew-damp wooden platform as pale light filters through rice paper windows and a gentle hush settles over the training hall. This is the hour of zazen-seated meditation woven into the samurai's pre-dawn routine. In this stillness, you confront the vulnerabilities daylight will expose: fleeting thoughts, trembling limbs, and the primal fear of the unknown. By the Muromachi period, many samurai families had adopted Zen Buddhism, integrating Samu work practice and Zazen into their daily regimen. Monastic rules dictated that meditation begin before the first roosters crow, when the mind is most pliable. Records from Daitokuji Temple note that a disciplined 75-minute session starting at the third bell helped samurai calm the restlessness in their hearts long enough to steady a blade. You feel the weight of that legacy as you settle your posture, spine, straight hands, forming the cosmic mudra, and focus on slow, measured breaths. A quirky practice comes to mind. Some Zen-influenced samurai carried small bamboo flutes called shakuhachi under their robes. Between meditation breaths, they would play a single breathy note, an auditory koan that pierced mental chatter yet faded before the next inhalation. The breath control required to sustain that note honed both diaphragmatic strength and mental clarity forging a direct path between mindfulness and martial readiness. You imagine lifting a flute to your lips and sense how that single tone could align body and mind. The tatami beneath you absorbs every subtle movement, inviting you to notice tiny shifts, how your heels press together, how your shoulders relax or tighten, how tension collects in your chest before dissolving into the soles of your feet. Buddhist sutras emphasize mu emptiness as the foundation of clarity. You recall a koan once shared by your teacher, "What is the sound of one hand at dawn?" It's meant to shatter dualistic thought, urging you to perceive each moment before light and dark merge. You listen for that sound, now the faintest whisper of a breath or a heartbeat. During your meditation, the hall's sliding doors open without a sound. A young page enters with a steaming cup of matcha tea. The whisked green froth carries a vegetal aroma that mingles with the cool wood scent. You bow to receive it, and the page departs as silently as he arrived. Sipping the tea, you feel warmth spread through your core, sharpening your senses and grounding you in the present. This tea practice, Chinoyu, was adopted from Zen monasteries, and some samurai claimed that the ritual of whisking and sipping matcha before dawn cleared lingering sleep like a sword stroke through fog. Your eyes remain half closed as you sense the first stirrings of the day beyond the hall, a distant temple bell, the soft bleat of a goat, a guard shifting his spear. These external sounds test the stability you've built in meditation. Each distraction is both a challenge and an opportunity to return to shikantaza, just sitting. You remind yourself that vulnerability isn't weakness, but an invitation to deepen your resolve. Modern psychologists call this interoceptive exposure teaching, that facing uncomfortable sensations builds resilience and insight long encoded in Zen samurai training. A fellow samurai joins you kneeling at a respectful distance. You share a slight nod, no words needed. In this shared silence, you both inhabit the space between waking and action, mind and muscle, poised like a drawn bow. The Bushido precept, Seijaku tranquility, calls you to maintain that calm as dawn's light strengthens. You notice how his breath synchronizes with yours, a subtle demonstration of interconnected focus. The hall remains dim until a single paper lantern is lit, its pale flame breathing life into the space. The koan of light and dark emerges. Without flame, no fire. Without darkness, no glow. Samurai knew that shinobi could exploit this threshold, patrols trained to move without lanterns, relying on senses honed in darkness. Conversely, a single lantern placed strategically could create overwhelming glare, exposing hidden forms. You trace the lantern's arc across the tatami, aware of how one point of light can both reveal and conceal. After 20 minutes, your teacher signals the end of zazen by striking a kyoken bell. Its reverberations roll through the hall like distant thunder. You bow deeply, letting the sound echo within you before drawing your wakizashi for the next practice, the morning cutting drill datotsu performed in one fluid motion. But you pause, remembering that the mind must lead the blade. You recall a historical debate among scholars. Did Zen's influence make samurai more efficient killers, or did it temper their violence with compassion? Some argue that pure mindfulness heightened lethal precision. Others say it fostered mercy by illuminating the shared nature of all beings. You rise slowly, feet grounded, and step to the training mat. The polished wood gleams faintly, waiting for your blade. You lift your sword, feeling its balanced weight, at the guard. With a deep inhale, full and resonant, you execute a horizontal cut, the steel whispering through the air. You feel every muscle fiber activate in harmony, a physical manifestation of the mental stillness you cultivated moments before. As the morning sun climbs, you sheath your wakizashi and bow to the empty hall. The chant of temple bells grows stronger as you step outside to join the day's duties. Yet inside, you carry the dawn's lesson. True strength springs from stillness, and vulnerability, acknowledged and observed, becomes the well of unwavering resolve. You step onto the courtyard's flagstones, dew glinting like silent witnesses. With each footfall, you ask yourself, did Zen's empty mind sharpen the blade's edge, or did it open the heart to see beyond the cut? You step onto the mist-damp grass just as the sun's first rays warm the horizon, feeling the soft give of earth beneath your tabi-clad feet. Today's practice is the art of measured humility, Kenkyo no Shugyo, where you hone both mind and body for the daybreak's challenges. In this gentle discipline, you learn that strength grows from knowing your limits and pushing them with mindful respect. Long ago, samurai masters taught that true mastery begins with acknowledging one's flaws. Historical training manuals from the Kamakura period prescribed a regimen of repetitive, minimalist drills, kata performed at half-speed barefoot on polished stone and with eyes closed. This method forced practitioners to sense balance, weight, and movement without relying on sight or speed. You remember reading that some schools required students to perform the same 10 cuts, while kneeling each cut, lowering the body fractionally more until the thighs burned with fatigue. This slow, deliberate descent forged endurance and humility in equal measure. You stand facing the open courtyard, the sword rack silent behind you. The morning air carries a faint tang of pine and wet stone. You draw your katana with a soft swish, feeling the leather-wrapped grip settle into your palms. You begin the first kata, a slow horizontal draw each fraction of an inch, measured your focus, narrowing to the seam where the blade meets the air. A curious detail surfaces in your memory. Some samurai schools trained students to perform these slow-motion cuts in morning dew, so thick it clung to blades like pearls. The added weight required greater control, teaching students to manage both the sword's momentum and the unpredictable sway of wet grass. You glance down at the dew-laden blade droplets gathering at the tsuba's edge. Each drop shifts with your movement, a living reminder that even the smallest variable demands attention. With 5 slow cuts complete, you sheath the sword and transition into kokyu, the breathing exercise. Standing with feet shoulder-width apart, you place one hand over your hara, your lower abdomen, and the other on your back, just above the hips. You inhale deeply, feeling the breath expand your belly like a billowing sail, then exhale completely through slightly parted lips. A soft hiss that disperses tension. Scholars of martial physiology note that this diaphragmatic breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering heart rate and sharpening focus, an ancient precursor to modern stress management techniques. When a faint rustle from a nearby pine momentarily draws your gaze, you catch sight of a lone ivy vine twining up the trunk. Its tendrils coil inward with each mist-laden breeze, demonstrating how nature responds to repeated stimuli over time. You recall that samurai used to observe such botanical movements hibiki no shizuku, or echoes and droplets, to refine their own sense of responsiveness. If a vine reacts to a light gust, so too must a warrior adapt to an opponent's feint or a blade's shift in weight. You proceed to the next stage barefoot stance training. You step onto a narrow wooden beam, set atop two low stones, arms extended like the wings of a crane. The beam's surface is smooth and slightly warped, requiring subtle adjustments of ankle and toe pressure to maintain balance. Each wobble sends a tiny shock through your muscles, demanding micro-corrections that refine proprioception. Instructors centuries ago used this practice to teach that the ground beneath the battlefield is as unpredictable as the enemy's intentions, and that a samurai's foundation must be as adaptable as a reed in the wind. A gentle breeze stirs the morning air, riffled by the beam's narrow width. You imagine performing these drills on a castle wall's crest, where one misstep meant a long fall, cultivating an acute sense of caution even in the face of risk. The whisper of wind through nearby bamboo groves reminds you of the earlier lesson in stillness, zazen, and you close your eyes for a moment, letting your body memorize the beam's curve without sight. When you open them again, you carry a deeper trust in your own stability. After a minute of beam practice, you step down and exchange a respectful bow with your fellow student who passes you. A hand compass, a simple tool with a floating magnetized needle housed in lacquered wood. While samurai relied primarily on training and instinct, some forward-thinking warriors carried such compasses on long campaigns, especially during foggy dawns when landmarks vanished. This blend of humble self-reliance and practical assistance embodies the spirit of Kenkyo, knowing when to trust yourself and when to honor the tools that support you. Your final exercise is a partner drill in which you and another samurai engage in slow-motion paired kata. Each strike is countered in equally deliberate fashion, requiring both participants to yield and adapt in turn. As you parry his drawn cut, you sense the meeting of steel not as conflict, but as dialogue, a conversation in motion. The shared pace fosters mutual respect, teaching that humility extends to acknowledging another's skill and learning from their approach. Neuroscientists today describe this as co-regulation, the synchronization of bodies and minds that build social cohesion and trust. By the time the sun has risen fully, you and your partner complete 10 exchanges, then bow deeply. Your muscles hum with gentle fatigue, and your breathing returns to its regular rhythm. You sheath your sword with reverence, recalling that every blade drawn at dawn was once practiced in humility. As you wrap the hilt cloth, you wonder, did the samurai become great warriors through relentless speed and power, or by the quiet humility of slow, mindful practice that shaped every fiber of their being? With that question nestled in your mind, you step toward the training hall doors, ready to carry the stillness and adaptability honed in the dawn into the day's unfolding challenges. You step into the dew-slicked bamboo grove as dawn's light softens the world's edges and a hush magnifies every rustle of leaf and shifting shadow. Today, you explore the legends of night creatures, particularly the lore of the Tengu, the supernatural mountain dog said to prowl shaded forests before first light. In their winged guise, they embodied the unpredictable boundary between human and kami, inspiring both fear and awe in warriors brave enough to cross their paths. Historical accounts first mention Tengu in Heian period diaries, describing them as long-nosed goblins with crimson faces swooping through mountain passes at dawn to test travelers' courage. Some records claim that monks battling wicked spirits trained samurai to mimic Tengu calls, low hoots and whistles to ward off bandits who feared they had stumbled into demon-haunted terrain. You pause on a mossy path, inhale the sharp scent of bamboo resin, and try a single low-pitched whistle. The sound echoes oddly, sliding between tones like the breath of an unseen wing. Your hand rests on the smooth haft of your yari as you move deeper into the grove where tangled roots trip careless feet. Samurai and fringe clans sometimes carried tiny Tengu doko bells, bronze charms stamped with a Tengu's face to hang from their armor. The clinking sound was believed to confuse malevolent spirits, deflecting curses and bad luck. You check the small bronze bell at your hip, running your fingers over its raised ridges, and feel a thrill of connection to those ancient protectors. A sudden hush falls as you enter a clearing ringed with tall cedars. Here, the ground dips into a shallow basin where mist pools like liquid silver. Local villagers call this place Tengu no Kana, Tengu's cauldron, believing that massive clawed footprints would appear in the wet earth at dawn if a Tengu had passed. You crouch to study the soil and spot a half-formed impression 15 inches long with 3 deep grooves suggesting oversized talons. You trace its edge carefully, noting the compacted soil beneath as though someone or something trusted its weight on the ground. Legend holds that any samurai who steps into these prints must perform a deep bow and recite a purification prayer or risk endless misfortune. You rise slowly, bow your head, and whisper a short verse to Fudo Mu, the immovable one. In that gesture, you honor the grove's mystery and acknowledge that even seasoned warriors must yield to the unknown. Stepping past the basin, you find the remains of a small stone shrine, weathered, moss-covered, yet still emanating quiet power. Inside, hardened rice cake offerings crumble beside carved eyes that once glared from the shrine's face. Samurai chronicles describe how field commanders stationed shrines along forest trails to placate local spirits and ensure safe passage for troops. You light a single stick of incense and let its curl of smoke drift upward, a silent request for protection from any Tengu watching overhead. As the incense smoke rises, you hear a distant call, not of any normal bird, but something deeper, a two-toned croak, blending crow and human laughter. You tilt your head, scanning high branches, and glimpse a dark form perched on a forked limb, perhaps a large owl or a Tengu, disguised in raptor guise. Its eyes reflect dawn's glow, then vanish into the bamboo haze. Your heart leaps, and you grip your weapon, but then you release a controlled breath, recognizing that fear is the Tengu's greatest gift to a warrior, teaching alertness in every heartbeat. Pushing onward, you come to a fallen log draped in ferns. Beneath it lies a single feather too large for any forest bird you know, curving like a scythe. You pick it up and note its iridescent sheen of green, black, and crimson shifting in the morning light. According to Tengu lore, such feathers, Tengu Hane, bestow glimpses of hidden truths upon those who keep them. You wrap the feather in cloth and tuck it into your breast pouch, feeling its weight as both omen and inspiration. Exiting the bamboo grove, you enter a meadow where wild grasses sway in a cool breeze. Here, the sun fully rises, and you pause to greet the warming light. The Tengu's presence fades with the mist, leaving behind only legend and the echo of wing beats. You center yourself, understanding that mythic encounters in the pre-dawn hours sharpen the senses, cultivate respect for unseen forces, and remind you that courage is more than sword skill. It is reverence for the world's mysteries. As you walk back toward the castle gates, you wonder, did samurai truly glimpse Tengu in the forest's depths? Or did these tales reflect their need to honor nature's power at dawn's edge? You slip the feather back into your pouch heart, steady and mind aglow with the grove's ancient hush. The day's duties await, but you carry with you the Tengu's lesson. Vigilance and humility walk hand in hand beneath the silent dawn. You emerge into the courtyard just as dawn's first golden rays strike the crooked rooftops and the world begins to hum with renewed life. The cool air carries the faint scent of rice porridge from nearby kitchens, but your focus remains on the rising mist along the castle moat. Today you turn your attention to early morning fog, an ally and adversary that can cloak friend and foe alike. Every samurai knows that mist held strategic value. Records from the Nanboku-cho period describe generals using thick dawn fog to mask troop movements, shifting banners and swords like ghostly specters across the battlefield. One celebrated maneuver at the Battle of Kawanakajima involved 5,000 cavalry charging unseen through swirling mist, catching their opponents frozen with indecision. You recall how those riders later described the scene as horses emerging from the sea, images that still send a shiver down your spine. You step carefully along wet flagstones, the mist swirling at your ankles like a living thing. You pause at the bridge spanning the moat, noting how the wooden planks glisten under the haze. A clever defensive trick involved laying rice straw between slats, which sizzled when damp, producing a soft hiss enough to warn watchmen of approaching footsteps without revealing their own position. You crouch, sliding a hand under a plank to feel the straw's damp fibers, and imagine how each hiss could provide precious seconds to prepare. A sudden cry from a guard by the north gate draws your attention. He signals with a raised spear, pointing toward the outer wall where a dark shape emerges from the fog. You knock an arrow to your yumi, an asymmetrical longbow crafted of bamboo and sinew, and take steady aim. In the low light, you make out the silhouette of a merchant cart, horses' hooves muffled by straw matting on the moat road. Merchants often traveled before sunrise to avoid midday heat and bandits, but they also risked misidentification as enemy spies under the fog's concealment. You lower your arrow, then step forward to meet the caravan at the gate. The driver, surprised by your silent arrival, bows deeply as you slide the cart aside so it may pass safely. The air fills with the welcoming scent of steamed rice and pickled plum supplies destined for the garrison's morning meal. You fingerprint the stamped seal on a wooden cask, an official crest granted to licensed traders, a Tokugawa-era regulation designed to prevent contraband from slipping through the gates under cover of fog. As the cart rumbles onward, you turn back to the mist-shrouded courtyard. The fog's density shift unpredictably, swirling into shapes that trick the eye, a practiced ninjutsu experts exploited by planting damp gunpowder smoke bombs in hidden alcoves to amplify the haze. You peer through the drifting veil, aware that shadows can form and dissolve without pattern, a constant reminder that perception is never absolute. Stepping toward the barracks, you brush dew from tall grasses bordering the path. Between blades, you spot tiny footprints, those of a barn owl, its talons leaving neat semicircles. Farmers revered these birds for hunting rodents among rice paddies, but samurai also valued their silent flight. When fashioned into arrow fletchings, owl feathers reduced wind noise by mitigating turbulence, an obscure yet effective tweak passed down through generations of master fletchers. You enter the training yard where a wooden dummy stands half cloaked in mist. Today's drill involves practicing sword cuts in near zero visibility, swinging your katana blind until only the faint resistance of bamboo or flesh meets steel. This exercise hones muscle memory and trust in one's form, rather than sight alone. You step forward and execute a swift horizontal cut, the blade slicing through vapor with a soft swish. Each repetition sharpens your mind's map of space, teaching you that the body can navigate without eyes, guided by balance and breath. A curious incident from the late Sengoku era comes to mind. A renowned swordsman once challenged his students to duels in a rice field at dawn, the mist so thick that only footprints marked the ground. Many hesitated, but one disciple, blindfolded and unfazed by the fog, bested his rivals simply by sensing motion on the wind. His name became legend not for victory, but for demonstrating that perception extends beyond vision. You pause your practice as a distant temple bell tolls, counting the third hour before sunrise. Its deep resonance cuts through the fog, serving as both spiritual summons and practical timekeeper. Early morning, Jikara-ji bell temple bells allowed samurai to coordinate wake-ups and patrols without torches. Their hollow tones traveled farther through mist than any shouted command. You find comfort in the bell's measured cadence, a reliable anchor in the shifting haze. Turning, you make your way back to the gatehouse, where the moat surface now reflects pale sunlight filtering through the fog. You notice tiny waves radiating from a heron's footsteps as it hunts for frogs in the shallows, another early riser adapted to dawn's concealment. You imagine the bird's patience and precision qualities any samurai would envy when stepping into uncertain terrain. As the fog thins, you pass a series of dry stone walls built with gaps just wide enough to let water run off, but too narrow for swords. In the mist's embrace, these walls became near invisible barriers, guiding or trapping the unwary. You test the gap's width with a gloved fingertip and nod, appreciating the meticulous craftsmanship that turned the castle grounds into a shifting labyrinth at dawn. Before the mist fully lifts, you climb the watchtower's narrow stairs. From this vantage, you survey the courtyard, now revealed training yards, granaries, and the meandering moat, all softened by the departing haze. In this moment, you understand why samurai revered the silent dawn, not out of fear, but out of respect for nature's power to conceal and reveal. You place a hand on the tower railing, feeling damp wood against your palm. The air now warms and birdsong swells as the mist dissolves. You lean forward, drawing in a steady breath, and consider the interplay of strategy and phenomenon. Was mist merely terrain to exploit, or did its ephemeral beauty shape the samurai's appreciation for impermanence and adaptability? You jot a quick note in your patrol log. How did the aesthetic appreciation of morning mist influence samurai tactics and philosophy? Then, as sunlight floods the courtyard, you descend the tower steps, ready to face the clear day with lessons learned in its fleeting fog. You step into the warm glow of the castle kitchens as dawn's mist finally lifts, and the comforting aroma of simmering porridge and dashi broth envelops you. Today's focus is the samurai's final pre-dawn ritual, the humble yet sacred meal that nourishes body and spirit before the day's trials, an often overlooked ceremony every bit as essential as swordsmanship itself. By the Azuchi Momoyama period, samurai households followed precise guidelines for morning sustenance. The asagayu morning rice gruel was served at exactly the fourth cock's crow. Its consistency, neither too thin nor too thick porridge, must cradle the spoon without clinging like a brick. You lift a small lacquer bowl of steaming gruel, noting its subtle swirl of millet and barley, an austere but balanced fare. Anecdotes from Heike Monogatari describe warriors who credited this simple meal with steadying trembling hands in battle. A quirk of the era to conserve fuel, many kitchens used leftover coals from the previous night's hearth under a shallow iron pan called a kamado. Early risers would stoke only the pan's perimeter, relying on thermal inertia to heat the gruel evenly. No roaring flames to betray one's cooking to enemies lurking beyond the gate. You peer into the pan's glowing ring and feel a soft heat under your palm, marveling at how necessity shaped this subtle culinary art. As you sip the porridge, your ears catch the gentle clink of ceramic bowls being set aside. Fellow samurai line up in reverent silence, each bowing slightly before their meal. The quiet companionship reinforces unity. You dine together, yet in solitary contemplation, honoring Bushido's mandate to temper individual prowess with collective harmony. Modern nutritionists note that this low-fat, high-fiber morning meal provided steady energy release essential for long hours of patrol and training, long before contemporary sports diets existed. You follow the head cook to the side table, where nuka miso rice bran miso sits in wooden vats. Only samurai of rank tasted the savory paste at dawn. Lower retainers received simple salted vegetables instead. The miso's complex umami, a blend of fermented rice bran soybeans and salt, was believed to awaken both palate and mind-aligning senses for the day's focus. You scoop a small dollop with a cedar paddle, noting its pale beige hue flecked with rice bran. A single taste releases a gentle salt tang and a whisper of sweetness. Just outside the kitchens, a row of stone basins holds fresh spring water for washing hands and faces. Samurai etiquette prescribed cleansing not only for hygiene, but as symbolic purification, leaving behind night's impurities before greeting daylight's responsibilities. You dip your hands into the cool water and splash your face, feeling droplets cascade and collect at your collar. The chill cuts through lingering drowsiness, sharpening your awareness. A curious custom survives in old scrolls. Some clans mixed shaved ice into morning gruel during summer dawns, a contrarian luxury that cooled bodies while paradoxically heightening alertness. They called it suikamizu watermelon water, though no melon was involved. You watch as one steward shaves a chunk of ice against a metal grate, its flakes drifting into a separate bowl of porridge. The very idea seems extravagant, yet those who tasted it swore the contrast of hot and cold roused both body and spirit with electrifying clarity. From the kitchen, you carry a small plate of roasted chestnuts and dried persimmons, gifts from nearby farmers celebrating the previous autumn's harvest. These treats symbolize gratitude for the land's bounty and remind you of the samurai's dual role, warrior and steward of local villages. You nibble a chestnut, its buttery sweetness lingering on your tongue, and appreciate how this tactile pleasure anchors you to the human world beyond the battlefield. As you finish your meal, You note the time by the sunstone crystal affixed near the doorway. When sunlight strikes the stone's edge at a certain angle, it casts a pale golden beam across the threshold, an elegant natural clock that agrees with the kitchen's rooster calls within a minute's variance. Scholars debate whether samurai truly trusted sunstones for precise timing, or if such tales were later embellishments. Yet your own small beam now arcs across the stone floor, marking the moment to conclude breakfast and begin the formal inspection of arms. You stand and bow to the head cook, acknowledging his skill in sustaining samurai bodies and morale. He inclines his head, gratified by your silent respect. Carrying your empty bowl, you join the courtyard's gentle bustle pages, arranging training weapons, stable hands brushing war horses and instructors, calling students to the drill yard. The day unfolds rapidly now, yet you carry within you the calm confidence granted by a well-honored morning ritual. Before leaving the kitchen precinct, you pause to consider the bigger picture. Was this meal merely fuel? Or was it a bridge between ritual and readiness, uniting tradition, community, and bodily resilience? The answer lingers as you stride toward the training field, your senses sharpened, hunger sated, and spirit aligned for the duties of daylight. You step onto the courtyard's flower-bordered path as the sky shifts from pale rose to soft gold, and a chorus of birds greets the new day. Today's lesson focuses on the morning chorus, the practice of listening to dawn birds as natural sentinels whose song herald danger, weather changes, and even troop movements. Every samurai knew that Suzume sparrows began their trill just before other birds stirred, acting as nature's preliminary alarm clock. Feudal records from the Edo period describe how early rising sentries tuned their ears to sparrow calls as an informal timepiece. When sparrows sang 3 clear notes, guards knew it was time to patrol the outer walls. Less than 2 minutes later, you pause under a flowering plum tree and close your eyes to the morning soundscape, a lively chiru-chiru, followed by the distant ho-oh of a nightingale welcoming daylight. A quirky detail surfaces. Some samurai carried tiny bamboo whistles carved to mimic specific bird calls, suisei no oto to cue gatekeepers who might have slept through the natural chorus. One clan's whistle produced a near-perfect sparrow song complete with rising and falling pitch. It was used to rouse guards stationed in echo-prone ravines where actual sparrow calls were muffled by mist. You lift a slim whistle from your robe, pocket, press it to your lips, and blow the 3-note sparrow sequence. It emits a crisp, playful tune that blends seamlessly with the real bird song, causing a nearby page to blink in surprise. You step forward, leather soles making no sound on the moist gravel, and listen for other indicators. A lone crow's rasping caw near the roofline suggests a raptor patrol, or perhaps an early warning of scavengers drawn by carrion. Edo-era folklore warned that crows calling in pairs at dawn marked returning traders, whereas solitary calls pointed to wandering bandits probing defenses. You tilt your head to catch the crow's direction and note its position over the kitchen smoke vent. Its keen eye probably spotted an easy meal rather than plotting attack. Focusing on subtler songsters, you hear the gentle pai-po of a robin's soft whistle, komodori in Japanese lore, a sign of clear skies and mild winds ahead. Samurai meteorological manuals referenced by the Tokugawa shogunate noted that robin songs at first light indicated high atmospheric pressure, making dawn a safe window to scout nearby valleys. You recall an entry instructing scouts. When the Commodore sings a three-note litany without tremor, examine boulders for fresh hoof prints. If the song falters, expect rain and stay your hand. A sudden flutter draws your gaze to a low hedge where a sparrowhawk descends, silently dropping a small quivering field mouse at your feet, nature's raw breakfast. Sparrowhawks, though feared by hatchling sparrows, were respected by samurai as symbols of swift justice. Ancient falconry scrolls reveal that some warriors trained these hawks to patrol perimeters at dawn, their piercing kya calls alerting handlers to intruders. You bow respectfully and watch the hawk glide away, talons empty, but purpose fulfilled. You wander toward the koi pond where a lone warbler, Hosoba Hyodori, perches on a stone lantern. Its song rises and falls in elaborate flourishes, believed by samurai poets to carry coded messages. Local variations in melody corresponded to specific watch posts. In Yamato counts, warbler songs were transcribed phonetically into early warning logs, bridging oral tradition and written record. You note the warbler's particular cadence, a slow measured trill that aligns with the shift change at the inner moat. Drawing near the pond's edge, you kneel and listen to the rippling water. The reflective surface amplifies a hidden tune, the faint chick-a-dee-dee of tiny bush warblers nesting near the reeds. Their chorus served as a bioindicator. A robust warbler population meant flourishing insect life and thriving rice fields, signaling food security for the castle's inhabitants. Modern ecologists study similar patterns to track ecosystem health. Yet you recognize that samurai forebears perceived these bioindicators centuries earlier. Standing, you follow a narrow trail lined with flowering irises to the armory, where armor racks catch stray bird notes as swallows flit overhead. Swallow Tsubame who arrived with the first spring warmth, their resonance a hopeful sign of renewal. Samurai practiced Suisei Hansei, the spring song reflection, pausing morning drills to honor nature's return and remind themselves that every victory is as fleeting as a swallow's brief visit. As your patrol nears its end, you pass the training field where sparrows dart between dropped grains used to feed recruits. Some instructors even incorporated sparrow behavior into lessons. If a sparrow startled a student mid-kata, they learned not to flee, but to steady their balance, a metaphor for maintaining composure when life's surprises strike. You watch a student pause mid-strike regather stance and finish with calm precision, embodying that lesson. The sun climbs fully and the courtyard fills with human voices, the town criers, call merchants, setting up stalls, children's laughter melding with birdsong. You pause beneath a cherry tree and breathe deeply, letting the layers of sound merge into a dawn symphony. In this convergence, you glimpse how samurai lived in harmony with nature's rhythms, while safeguarding against its tricks an exquisite balance of reverence and readiness. As you make your way back to the inner, keep you ponder the profound question that lingers: to what extent did samurai rely on the natural orchestra of dawn bird calls as tactical intelligence, and how much of their interpretation was shaped by ritual belief rather than empirical observation? Carrying the songs of sparrows, robins, warblers, and hawks within you, you return to the castle's heart, ready for the day ahead. You step into the warm glow of the castle kitchens as dawn's mist finally lifts, and the comforting aroma of simmering porridge and dashi broth envelops you. Today's focus is the samurai's final pre-dawn ritual, the humble yet sacred meal that nourishes body and spirit before the day's trials, an often overlooked ceremony as essential as swordsmanship itself. By the Azuchi Momoyama period, samurai households followed precise guidelines for morning sustenance. The asagayu morning rice gruel was served at exactly the fourth cock's crow. Its consistency, neither too thin nor too thick, porridge must cradle the spoon without clinging like a brick. You lift a small lacquer bowl of steaming gruel, noting its subtle swirl of millet and barley grains, an austere but balanced fare. Anecdotes from Heike Monogatari describe warriors who credited this simple meal with steadying, trembling hands in battle. A quirk of the era to conserve fuel, many kitchens used leftover coals from the previous night's hearth under a shallow iron pan called a kamado. Early risers would stoke only the pan's perimeter, relying on thermal inertia to heat the gruel evenly. No roaring flames to betray one's cooking to enemies lurking beyond the gate. You peer into the pan's glowing ring and feel a soft heat under your palm, marveling at how necessity shaped this subtle culinary art. As you sip the porridge, your ears catch the gentle clink of ceramic bowls being set aside. Fellow samurai line up in reverent silence, each bowing slightly before their meal. The quiet companionship reinforces unity. You dine together, yet in solitary contemplation, honoring Bushido's mandate to temper individual prowess with collective harmony. Modern nutritionists note that this low-fat, high-fiber morning meal provided a steady energy release essential for long hours of patrol and training long before contemporary sports diets existed. You follow the head cook to a side table where nuka miso, rice bran miso, sits in wooden vats. Only samurai of rank tasted the savory paste at dawn. Lower retainers received simple salted vegetables instead. The miso's complex umami, a blend of fermented rice, bran soybeans, and salt, was believed to awaken both palate and mind-aligning senses for the day's focus. You scoop a small dollop with a cedar paddle, noting its pale beige hue flecked with rice bran. A single taste releases a gentle salt tang and a whisper of sweetness. Just outside the kitchens, a row of stone basins holds fresh spring water for washing hands and faces. Samurai etiquette prescribed cleansing not only for hygiene, but as symbolic purification, leaving behind night's impurities before greeting daylight's responsibilities. You dip your hands into the cool water and splash it onto your face, feeling droplets cascade and collect at your collar. The chill cuts through lingering drowsiness, sharpening your awareness. A curious custom survives in old scrolls. Some clans mixed shaved ice into morning gruel during summer dawns, a contrarian luxury that cooled bodies while paradoxically heightening alertness. They called it suikamizu watermelon water, though no melon was used. You watch as one steward shaves a chunk of ice against a metal grate, its flakes drifting into a separate bowl of porridge. The very idea seems extravagant, yet those who tasted it swore the contrast of hot and cold roused both body and spirit with electrifying clarity. From the kitchen, you carry a small plate of roasted chestnuts and dried persimmons, gifts from nearby farmers celebrating the previous autumn's harvest. These treats symbolize gratitude for the land's bounty and remind you of the samurai's dual role, warrior and steward of local villages. You nibble a chestnut, its buttery sweetness lingering on the tongue, and appreciate how this tactile pleasure anchors you to the human world beyond the battlefield. As you finish your meal, you note the time by the sunstone crystal affixed near the doorway. When sunlight strikes the stone's edge at a certain angle, it casts a pale golden beam across the threshold, an elegant natural clock that aligns with the kitchen's rooster calls within a minute's variance. Scholars debate whether samurai truly trusted sunstones for precise timing or if such tales were later embellishments. Yet your own small beam now arcs across the stone floor, marking the moment to conclude breakfast and begin the formal inspection of arms. You stand and bow to the head cook, acknowledging his skill in sustaining samurai bodies and morale. He inclines his head, gratified by your silent respect. Carrying your empty bowl, you join the courtyard's gentle bustle pages, arranging training weapons, stable hands brushing war horses, and instructors calling students to the drill yard. The day unfolds rapidly now, yet you carry within you the calm confidence granted by a well-honored morning ritual. Before leaving the kitchen precinct, you pause to consider the bigger picture. Was this meal merely fuel or a bridge between ritual and readiness, uniting tradition, community, and bodily resilience? The answer lingers as you stride toward the training field, your senses sharpened, hunger sated, and spirit aligned for the duties of daylight. Suggestion: consider varying sentence length slightly to enhance the rhythm. Short, impactful sentences can follow longer descriptive ones for a more dynamic flow. You depart the training grounds as the morning sun climbs, making your way toward the castle's outer precincts. Today's focus is the hidden pathways of dawn, how secret trails and concealed routes become visible only in the soft light before the world fully wakes. Navigating these hidden veins was crucial for samurai on reconnaissance surprise attacks or silent retreats. Long ago, scouts known as kanshi mapped forest paths by observing lichen growth on tree bark. Lichen tends to flourish on the north side of trunks in the northern hemisphere, marking directions. You pause beside a towering cedar brush, away a patch of moss, and reveal a vibrant circle of pale green. With your orientation thus determined, you step lightly eastward along a barely discernible animal trail. A quirky detail: some samurai carried small compasses made from deer antler, the magnetized ferric grit ground into the antler's porous interior. These crude but effective shikado deer compass pieces helped confirm direction when the sunstone's polarized light was blocked by dense canopy. You palm such an antler fragment, feeling its cool texture, then let its tiny magnetic arc guide your bearing. The trail winds between bamboo thickets whose culms bend in faint arcs from repeated travel. Locals called this the bamboo bow phenomenon, paths so well worn they shaped living wood. You push aside a bent stalk and glimpse the faint outline of a narrow embankment beyond once a ridge road to supply posts. Samurai understood these natural markers could betray otherwise invisible arteries of movement. Morning's shifting shadows reveal subtle depressions in soft earth strewn with fallen leaves. A traveler's cloak or pack strap pressed occasionally, leaving broken twigs behind. You crouch to study the pattern deeper in the middle and shallower at the ends, indicative of a burdened traveler with an overloaded pack. This tells you not only direction, but the estimated weight carried, suggesting an army's supply train rather than a lone scout. Your path narrows as you approach a moss-covered stone wall, its interlocking blocks worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Embedded in the moss are faint carvings, arrows pointing inward, likely covert markers left by allied ninja or scouts. These subtle gouges, placed at eye level for foot travelers, guided the trusted through dawn's fog. You trace one arrow with a cautious fingertip, smoothing its worn edge, Following the arrows, you emerge onto a forgotten bridge foundation. Its wooden planks long decayed, they were replaced by stones set flush with the water's surface. Samurai siege engineers sometimes dismantled such crossings to hinder pursuers, knowing dawn light would reveal stepping stones only to those who remembered their location. You test each stone's stability with a toe before placing your full weight. A soft chirp draws your attention upward to a kingfisher perched on a low branch. The bird's sharp eyes spot fish in the moat shallows, then vanish in a blur of iridescent blue. Samurai couriers observed kingfisher behavior to find shallow fords, places where horses and men could cross silently at first light. You note the bird's favored perch, then look downstream to spot a narrow causeway of stones just beneath the surface, a perfect crossing hidden by mist. Midway across, you crouch at the shore's edge, feeling the morning chill in your bones. Here, samurai sometimes placed inverted bamboo markers. Slender rods plunged tip first into the mud. Untrained eyes would brush them aside. Trained scouts spotted their glossy interior and knew a trail turned. You find 3 such stalks spaced precisely 2 paces apart, confirming the safe route across the marshy ground ahead. You follow these markers into an oak and maple grove where fallen leaves carpet the earth. The canopy allows dappled light to strike only at certain angles before sunrise. Samurai lamp-lighters studied these shafts to gauge time and position. When a particular leaf shadow moved past a carved notch in the stone, it signaled high noon back at the castle. You find one such notch on a mossy slab and observe its shadow sliding along the depression, evidence of this ancient timekeeping hack. Proceeding further, you come upon a hollow tree. Inside lies a faint trace of red pigment ochre mixed with sap to mark the path. Samurai used this natural paint, easily washed away by rain, to guide small units. You add a tiny dash of red powder to replenish the faded trail, ensuring followers pass this way unerringly in the dim dawn. Emerging from the grove, you reach a rocky outcrop where early morning mist hugs the stones. The final leg of your hidden path is revealed by lichen patterns on the rock faces, showing veined lines that point to a narrow shelf. You balance along the shelf, mindful of loose pebbles, and find the ancient gate latch, a carved lever, still functional. With a soft click, the hidden postern gate swings open, granting you entry to the inner bailey before the main drawbridge lifts. You slip inside, closing the gate behind you, and exhale slowly. Behind you lies the secret route, known only to a few, an interplay of moss, pigment stone, and living wood revealed by dawn subtleties. You sheath your sword, feeling the hidden pathway's lessons etched into your mind. As the courtyard stirs with the clang of armor and morning drills, you pose the lingering question, to what extent did samurai genius in reading nature's clues define their battlefield mastery, and how much of these skills were simply survival instincts honed by necessity? With that reflection, you join the bustling keep, carrying the dawn's hidden way within you. Suggestion: to strengthen the narrative flow, vary sentence length by inserting a brief, punchy sentence, e.g., silence reigns, after a longer descriptive passage. You kneel on the dewy wooden platform as pale light filters through rice paper windows and a gentle hush settles over the training hall. This is the hour of zazen-seated meditation woven into the samurai's pre-dawn routine. In this stillness, You confront the vulnerabilities that daylight will expose: fleeting thoughts, trembling limbs, and the primal fear of the unknown. Historically, many samurai households adopted Zen Buddhism by the Muromachi period, integrating Samu work practice and Zazen into their daily regimen. Monastic rules dictated that meditation begin before the first rooster crowed, when the mind is most pliable. Records from Daitokuji Temple note that a disciplined 75-minute session starting at the third bell helped warriors calm the restlessness in their hearts long enough to steady a blade. You feel the weight of that legacy as you settle your posture spine, straight hands, forming the cosmic mudra, and focus on slow, even breaths. A curious practice emerges in your memory. Some Zen-influenced samurai carried small bamboo flutes called shakuhachi beneath their robes. Between meditation breaths, they would play a single breathy note, an auditory koan that pierced mental chatter, yet faded before the next inhalation. The breath control required to sustain that note honed diaphragmatic strength and mental clarity, forging a direct path between mindfulness and martial readiness. You briefly imagine lifting such a flute, feeling its hollow form against your lips, and sense how a single tone could align body and mind. The tatami beneath you absorbs every subtle movement, inviting you to notice tiny shifts: how your heels press together, how your shoulders relax or tighten, how tension collects in your chest before dissolving into your feet. Buddhist sutras emphasize mu, emptiness, as the foundation of clarity. You recall a koan once shared by your teacher: what sound does a single hand make at dawn? A riddle meant to shatter dualistic thought, it urges you to perceive each moment before light and dark merge. You listen for that sound, now the thinnest whisper of a breath or a heartbeat. As you meditate, the hall's sliding doors creak open and a young page enters with a steaming cup of matcha tea. The whisked green froth carries a vegetal aroma that mingles with the cool wood scent. You bow to receive it, and the page departs without a sound. Sipping the tea, you feel warmth spread through your core, sharpening your senses and grounding you in the present. Tea practice Chinoyu was adopted from Zen monasteries, and some samurai claim this pre-dawn ritual cleared lingering sleep like a sword stroke through fog. Your eyes remain half closed as you sense the first stirrings of the day beyond the hall: a distant temple bell, the soft bleat of a goat, the rustle of a guard shifting his spear. These external sounds test the stability you've built in meditation. Each distraction is both a challenge and an opportunity to return to shikantaza, just sitting. You remind yourself that vulnerability is not weakness, but an invitation to deepen your resolve. Modern psychologists call this interoceptive exposure, teaching that facing uncomfortable bodily sensations builds resilience and insight encoded in Zen-inspired samurai training. A fellow samurai joins you, kneeling respectfully at your side. You share a slight nod, no words needed. In this shared silence, you both inhabit the space between waking and action, mind and muscle, poised like a drawn bow. The Bushido precept of Sajaku tranquility calls you to maintain that calm. As dawn's light strengthens, you notice how his breath synchronizes with yours, a subtle demonstration of co-regulation, the alignment of bodies and minds that builds trust. The hall remains shadowed until a single paper lantern is lit, its pale flame breathing life into the dim space. The interplay of light and dark emerges: without flame, no fire; without darkness, no glow. Samurai knew that shinobi could exploit this threshold, moving without lanterns, trusting senses honed in darkness. Conversely, a well-placed lantern could create overwhelming glare, exposing hidden forms. You trace the lantern's arc across the tatami, aware that a single point of light can both reveal and conceal. After 20 minutes, your teacher signals the end of Zazen by striking a kyoken bell. Its reverberations roll through the hall like distant thunder. You bow deeply, letting the sound echo within you before drawing your wakizashi for the next practice. The morning cutting drill Totsu performed in one fluid motion. But you pause, remembering that the mind must lead the blade. You recall a historical debate among scholars. Did Zen's influence make samurai more efficient killers? Or did it temper their violence with compassion? Some argue that pure mindfulness heightened lethal precision. Others say it fostered mercy by illuminating the shared nature of all beings. You rise slowly, feet grounded, as you step to the training mat. You lift the sword, feeling its balanced weight in your hands. With a deep inhale, full and resonant, you execute a horizontal cut, the blade whispering through the air. You feel every fiber of your muscles activate in harmony, a physical manifestation of the mental stillness you cultivated moments before. As the morning sun rises fully, you sheath your wakizashi, bowing to the empty hall. The temple bell's chants grow stronger, and you step outside to join the day's duties. Yet, inside, you carry the dawn's lesson. True strength is born from stillness and vulnerability. Acknowledged and observed, becomes the wellspring of unwavering resolve. You step onto the courtyard's flagstones, dew glinting like silent witnesses. With each footfall, you ask yourself, did Zen's empty mind sharpen the blade's edge, or did it open the heart to see beyond the cut? You step into the stone-walled strategy hall as sunlight streams through narrow slits, casting long shafts of light across the floor. Today's discussion centers on a scholarly debate, the tension between tactical reasoning and supernatural belief in the samurai's fear of dawn. In this hallowed chamber, lined with ink-painted maps and dusty scrolls, you weigh the measured mind against the whispering myths that shaped warriors' choices. At the head of the table, a lacquered map of the region is spread out, its faded ink marking villages, forests, and mountain passes. Clusters of red seals identify known ambush sites where ninja once struck at first light. You study one such seal near the Kiso River's bend, recalling chronicles that describe bodies discovered at dawn, cut down by unseen blades. Scholars argue fiercely over whether these attacks resulted from careful reconnaissance using natural cover, or from uncanny spirit blades wielded under supernatural guidance. You reach for a scroll titled Treatise on Dawn Tactics, penned by a 17th century strategist who insisted that ninja exploited shadows, wind, and weather alone, no spirits required. Its margins teem with annotations, wind diagrams showing how fog forms in river valleys at dawn, illustrations of arrow slits oriented to catch low sun angles, and notes on animal behavior as early warning systems. This empirical approach views the world as a puzzle of cause and effect, solvable by observation and calculation. Across the hall, another scroll glows under the morning light on the nature of Uri and dawn's threshold, written by a monk scholar who argued that restless spirits linger until sunrise, attacking the living in half-light. He detailed dozens of cases in which survivors attested not to stealthy assassins, but to cold hands tightening around throats, voices murmuring forgotten names and shadows moving against the grain of reality. For him, dawn's first glow did not dispel these apparitions, but marked their final chance to enact vengeance before being driven away by daylight's purity. You lean forward, tracing the monk's elegant brushstrokes. A third anonymous commentary preserved on a guard's ragged parchment attempt synthesis. It suggests that while ninja tactics explain most dawn attacks, samurai's superstition filled gaps in explanation, attributing inexplicable failures to malevolent spirits. This mental model, the commentator notes, boosted vigilance when strategic blind spots emerged, a psychological edge born of humble recognition that human knowledge is never complete. Picking up a charcoal stick, you sketch 2 columns on the wooden table, tactics on the left, spirits on the right. Under tactics, you note wind patterns, topographical concealment, and signal codes like bells and drums. Under spirits, you list Yurei lore, Tengu, legends of dawn prowlers, and reports of phantom swordsmen. You draw a line connecting river fog under tactics to the monk's accounts of fog-bound specters, illustrating how one phenomenon inspired 2 interpretations. A soft scuffle at the door announces your fellow samurai scholar, who enters carrying a stack of folios on astrology and omens. He spreads them out charts, predicting lunar eclipses, sunspot cycles, and weather omens tied to celestial movements. Ancient texts claim that certain star alignments before dawn forecast times of vulnerability when spirits could cross into the mortal realm and when ambushers found their prey most disoriented. You examined a chart correlating the moon's waning phase with increased reports of dawn attacks, suggesting that empirical observation and esoteric belief often intersected in samurai intelligence. You lift a small ceramic cup of tea provided for these sessions, leafy matcha, whisked to a froth. Each sip slows your mind, letting the layered debate settle into clarity. Without ceremony, you dip your finger into the tea and trace a final arrow from mist tactic to Yurei tale, acknowledging that story and strategy have always danced together in samurai lore. Your colleague clears his throat and proposes that the real power lay not in choosing one model over the other, but in embracing a dual framework, practical plans sharpened by cautious reverence for the unknown. He cites a legendary general who maintained 2 watchposts at dawn, one trained in conventional observation, the other chanting sutras to appease restless spirits. This redundancy ensured coverage of both rational and irrational threats, harnessing superstition as tactical insurance. You nod, recognizing the brilliance of this approach. Synthesizing belief and reason becomes a force multiplier. Troops alerted by ghost stories sharpen their senses to practical dangers, and maps annotated with spirit lore guided patrols to sites where fog and geography concealed both enemy and legend. In effect, samurai weaponized their own fears to create a more vigilant force. As the hall's lanterns dim in the growing daylight, you roll up the debate materials and replace the maps with blank parchment. At the top, you scribble the day's concluding question: how did the interplay of empirical observation and ritualized belief shape the samurai's uniquely resilient approach to dawn's uncertainties? Rising, you step out into the courtyard's golden light. The birdsong greets you not as a nuisance, but as a herald, a reminder that every sound and shadow can inform as much as scare. With the morning's dual lens of logic and lore guiding you, you prepare to face the day's real-world challenges, blade in hand, heart open to both calculation and wonder. You slip through the grove's entrance just as the sun tilts above the treetops, and a soft breeze stirs the bamboo stalks in a symphony of sighs. Today's lesson is the wind in the bamboo, learning to read nature's breath as both signal and safeguard in that fleeting moment before full daylight. You pause beneath a stand of arrow bamboo Pseudosassa japonica, its tall, slender stems arranged in neat rows. Samurai scouts noted that wind passing through these groves produces a distinctive shimmering whisper, unlike the rustle of broader leaves. Historical war diaries from the Onin War describe how patrols use the bamboo wind's pitch to estimate wind speed and direction crucial for coordinating smoke signals and guiding arrow volleys at dawn. You close your eyes and let the fluctuating drone wash over you, tuning your senses to its subtle shifts. A curious practice emerges from 16th century ninja memoirs. Agents inserted tiny slit drums into hollow bamboo sections before dawn. By gently tapping the drum's skin, they could mimic the grove's natural rhythm, masking sentry patrols or luring adversaries into false confidence. You press your ear against a nearby comb and tap softly, tock, 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 blending your knock with the grove's living percussion. The echo merges seamlessly, a testament to nature's versatile soundscape. As you walk deeper, you notice how the wind's tone changes with stalk age and spacing. Younger shoots, thin-walled and unweathered, produce higher-pitched trills, while older seasoned stalks yield a deeper, breathier lament. Samurai flankers use this knowledge to identify groves most suited for ambush. Staging denser clusters of older bamboo offered both cover and a bass undertone that could swallow approaching footsteps. You step lightly, counting stalks per meter, 4 here, 6 there, mapping the grove's acoustic zones in your mind. A sudden shift in wind sends a spiral of fallen leaves curling around your ankles. You crouch to examine one leaf's path. It spins clockwise exactly 3 revolutions before drifting to a stop. Scouts timed such rotations, believing they indicated post-dawn wind steadiness. 3 revolutions meant a stable breeze for at least 15 more minutes. You trace the leaf spin again, nodding to the grove's age-old mantra, follow the leaf, trust the air. On the forest floor, you spot a broken bamboo shard, its inner surface polished by repeated taps. You kneel, feeling the ring-shaped growth marks etched into its wall. These rings not only gauge culm age, but also record each year's droughts and deluges by varying thickness. Samurai foresters studied ring patterns to predict drought severity and secure water sources for horses and rice paddies. Early dendrochronology, born of battlefield necessity. Moving further, you come upon a small stone basin, moss-clad and collecting raindrops. A tiny bamboo pipe drips water into it, but the wind song drowns the drops plink, plink. Temple stewards place such basins along forest paths, both to cleanse travelers before dawn prayers and to mask approaching footsteps with the ambient wind bamboo concert. You cup the cool water, splash it on your face, and breathe deeply, ritual purification synchronized with nature's breath. A light glimmer ahead reveals a torii gate half hidden among stalks. Beneath its crossbeam, a silk banner flutters the kanji for protection, Mamoru painted in stormy indigo. The banner's rhythmic snapping, soft, then sharp, served as both spiritual emblem and mechanical weather vane. Priests interpreted its motion to forecast squalls that could disrupt castle patrols. You study the banner's angle, its midriff flutter, now pointing northeast, and commit that direction to memory. Further on, the grove opens to a narrow chasm where wind funnels like breath through a tunnel. Here, the kamikaze divine wind test awaited newly promoted scouts. They shouted a code word and listened for its echo. A faint duplicate dampened if the opposite wall was clear, distorted if boulders blocked sound, helped map hidden rock formations. You chant shinobi and wait. The echo returns crisp, but delayed by 2 beats, signaling transverse crevasses to avoid at dawn. Emerging, you spot an owl's roost, high among bamboo tips. Although nocturnal owls trained by samurai clans served as wind monitors, their feathers ruffled before gusts and fell silent in shifting breezes, alerting watchers to weather changes. You watch the owl's plumage tremble, nature's instinctive wind vein honed by wilderness. At the grove's edge, you stand on a raised platform of interlaced bamboo, a wind resonance deck. By the early Edo era, some lords built such platforms to compose kyoka poems inspired by the grove's dawn cadence. You close your eyes and listen as the wind plucks each stalk like strings on a giant zither, creating polyrhythmic patterns that shift with gust strength. You imagine carving a poem in your mind, each line woven from the grove's breath. Stepping off the deck, you reflect on how wind and bamboo served multiple roles: natural signal, tactical tool, poetic muse, and spiritual guide. Sheathing your blade, you bow to the grove's silent teaching and ask yourself, did samurai elevate the bamboo wind to ritual status because of its strategic utility? Or did its poetic beauty inspire practical tactics? With that question guiding your path, you leave the grove ears forever tuned to the wind's whispered wisdom at dawn. You slip through the grove's entrance just as the sun tilts above the treetops, and a soft breeze stirs the bamboo stalks in a symphony of sighs. Today's lesson is the wind in the bamboo, learning to read nature's breath as both signal and safeguard in that fleeting moment before full daylight. You pause beneath a stand of arrow bamboo Pseudosassa japonica, its tall, slender stems arranged in neat rows. Samurai scouts noted that wind passing through these groves produces a distinctive shimmering whisper, unlike the rustle of broader leaves. Historical war diaries from the Onin War describe how patrols used the bamboo wind's pitch to estimate wind speed and direction, crucial for coordinating smoke signals and guiding arrow volleys at dawn. You close your eyes and let the fluctuating drone wash over you, tuning your senses to its subtle shifts. A curious practice emerges from 16th century ninja memoirs. Agents inserted tiny slit drums into hollow bamboo sections before dawn. By gently tapping the drum's skin, they could mimic the grove's natural rhythm, masking sentry patrols or luring adversaries into false confidence. You press your ear against a nearby calm and tap softly, tock, 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 blending your knock with the grove's living percussion. The echo merges seamlessly, a testament to nature's versatile soundscape. As you walk deeper, you notice how the wind's tone changes with stalk age and spacing. Younger shoots thin-walled and unweathered produce higher-pitched trills, while older seasoned stalks yield a deeper, breathier lament. Samurai flankers use this knowledge to identify groves most suited for ambush, staging denser clusters of older bamboo offered both cover and a bass undertone that could swallow approaching footsteps. You step lightly, counting stalks per meter. 4 here, 6 there, mapping the grove's acoustic zones in your mind. A sudden shift in wind sends a spiral of fallen leaves curling around your ankles. You crouch to examine one leaf's path. It spins clockwise exactly 3 revolutions before drifting to a stop. Scouts timed such rotations, believing they indicated post-dawn wind steadiness. 3 revolutions meant a stable breeze for at least 15 more minutes. You trace the leaf spin again, nodding to the grove's age-old mantra, follow the leaf, trust the air. On the forest floor, you spot a broken bamboo shard, its inner surface polished by repeated taps. You kneel, feeling the ring-shaped growth marks etched into its wall. These rings not only gauge culm age, but also record each year's droughts and deluges by varying thickness. Samurai foresters studied ring patterns to predict drought severity and secure water sources for horses and rice paddies. Early dendrochronology, born of battlefield necessity. Moving further, you come upon a small stone basin, moss-clad and collecting raindrops. A tiny bamboo pipe drips water into it, but the wind's song drowns the drops plink, plink. Temple stewards place such basins along forest paths, both to cleanse travelers before dawn prayers and to mask approaching footsteps with the ambient wind bamboo concert. You cup the cool water, splash it on your face, and breathe deeply, ritual purification, synchronized with nature's breath. A light glimmer ahead reveals a torii gate half hidden among stalks. Beneath its crossbeam, a silk banner flutters the kanji for protection, Sho Mamoru painted in stormy indigo. The banner's rhythmic snapping, soft, then sharp, served as both spiritual emblem and mechanical weather-vane priests interpreted its motion to forecast squalls that could disrupt castle patrols. You study the banner's angle, its mid-riff flutter, now pointing northeast, and commit that direction to memory. Further on, the grove opens to a narrow chasm where wind funnels like breath through a tunnel. Here, the kamikaze divine wind test awaited newly promoted scouts. They shouted a code word and listened for its echo. A faint duplicate dampened if the opposite wall was clear, distorted if boulders blocked sound, helped map hidden rock formations. You chant shinobi and wait. The echo returns crisp, but delayed by 2 beats, signaling transverse crevasses to avoid at dawn. Emerging, you spot an owl's roost high among bamboo tips. Although nocturnal owls trained by samurai clans served as wind monitors, their feathers ruffled before gusts and fell silent in shifting breezes, alerting watchers to weather changes. You watch the owl's plumage tremble, nature's instinctive wind, vein honed by wilderness. At the grove's edge, you stand on a raised platform of interlaced bamboo, a wind resonance deck. By the early Edo era, some lords built such platforms to compose kyoka poems inspired by the grove's dawn cadence. You close your eyes and listen as the wind plucks each stalk like strings on a giant zither, creating polyrhythmic patterns that shift with gust strength. You imagine carving a poem in your mind, each line woven from the grove's breath. Stepping off the deck, you reflect on how wind and bamboo served multiple roles: natural signal, tactical tool, poetic muse, and spiritual guide. Sheathing your blade, you bow to the grove's silent teaching and ask, did samurai elevate the bamboo wind to ritual status because of its strategic utility? Or did its poetic beauty inspire practical tactics? With that question guiding your path, you leave the grove behind, ears forever tuned to the wind's whispered wisdom at dawn. You slip through the grove's entrance, just as the sun tilts above the treetops and a soft breeze stirs the bamboo stalks in a symphony of sighs. Today's lesson is the wind in the bamboo, learning to read nature's breath as both signal and safeguard in that fleeting moment before full daylight. You pause beneath the stand of arrow bamboo Pseudosassa japonica, its tall, slender stems arranged in neat rows. Samurai scouts noted that wind passing through these groves produces a distinctive shimmering whisper, unlike the rustle of broader leaves. Historical war diaries from the Onin War describe how patrols used the bamboo wind's pitch to estimate wind speed and direction, crucial for coordinating smoke signals and guiding arrow volleys at dawn. You close your eyes and let the fluctuating drone wash over you, tuning your senses to its subtle shifts. A curious practice emerges from 16th century ninja memoirs. Agents inserted tiny slit drums into hollow bamboo sections before dawn. By gently tapping the drum skin, they could mimic the grove's natural rhythm, masking sentry patrols or luring adversaries into false confidence. You press your ear against a nearby comb and tap softly, tock, 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 blending your knock with the grove's living percussion. The echo merges seamlessly, a testament to nature's versatile soundscape. As you walk deeper, you notice how the wind's tone changes with stalk age and spacing. Younger shoots thin-walled and unweathered produce higher-pitched trills, while older seasoned stalks yield a deeper, breathier lament. Samurai flankers use this knowledge to identify groves most suited for ambush. Staging denser clusters of older bamboo offered both cover and a bass undertone that could swallow approaching footsteps. You step lightly, counting stalks per meter, 4 here, 6 there, mapping the grove's acoustic zones in your mind. A sudden shift in wind sends a spiral of fallen leaves curling around your ankles. You crouch to examine one leaf's path. It spins clockwise exactly 3 revolutions before drifting to a stop. Scouts timed such rotations, believing they indicated post-dawn wind steadiness. 3 revolutions meant a stable breeze for at least 15 more minutes. You trace the leaf's spin again, nodding to the grove's age-old mantra, follow the leaf, trust the air. On the forest floor, you spot a broken bamboo shard, its inner surface polished by repeated taps. You kneel, feeling the ring-shaped growth marks etched into its wall. These rings not only gauge culm age, but also record each year's droughts and deluges by varying thickness. Samurai foresters studied ring patterns to predict drought severity and secure water sources for horses and rice paddies, early dendrochronology born of battlefield necessity. Moving further, you come upon a small stone basin, moss-clad and collecting raindrops. A tiny bamboo pipe drips water into it, but the wind song drowns the drops plink, plink. Temple stewards place such basins along forest paths, both to cleanse travelers before dawn prayers and to mask approaching footsteps with the ambient wind bamboo concert. You cup the cool water, splash it on your face, and breathe deeply, ritual purification synchronized with nature's breath. A light glimmer ahead reveals a torii gate half hidden among stalks. Beneath its cross beam, a silk banner flutters the kanji for protection, Sho Mamoru, painted in stormy indigo. The banner's rhythmic snapping, soft then sharp, served as both spiritual emblem and mechanical weather-vane priests interpreted its motion to forecast squalls that could disrupt castle patrols. You study the banner's angle, its mid-riff flutter, now pointing northeast, and commit that direction to memory. Further on, the grove opens to a narrow chasm where wind funnels like breath through a tunnel. Here, the kamikaze divine wind test awaited newly promoted scouts. They shouted a code word and listened for its echo. A faint duplicate dampened if the opposite wall was clear, distorted if boulders blocked sound, helped map hidden rock formations. You chant shinobi and wait. The echo returns crisp but delayed by 2 beats, signaling transverse crevasses to avoid at dawn. Emerging, you spot an owl's roost high among bamboo tips. Although nocturnal owls trained by samurai clans served as wind monitors, their feathers ruffled before gusts and fell silent in shifting breezes, alerting watchers to weather changes. You watch the owl's plumage tremble, nature's instinctive wind, vein honed by wilderness. At the grove's edge, you stand on a raised platform of interlaced bamboo, a wind resonance deck. By the early Edo period, some lords built such platforms to compose kyoka poems inspired by the grove's dawn cadence. You close your eyes and listen as the wind plucks each stalk like strings on a giant zither, creating polyrhythmic patterns that shift with gust strength. You imagine carving a poem in your mind, each line woven from the grove's breath. Stepping off the deck, you reflect on how wind and bamboo served multiple roles: natural signal, tactical tool, poetic muse, and spiritual guide. Sheathing your blade, you bow to the grove's silent teaching and ask, did samurai elevate the bamboo wind to ritual status because of its strategic utility? Or did its poetic beauty inspire practical tactics? With that question guiding your path, you leave the grove behind your ears, forever tuned to the wind's whispered wisdom at dawn. You awaken at first light to the quiet murmur of the castle coming fully to life, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the distant calls of stable hands, the chatter of merchants at the gate. Today, you bring closure to your odyssey, reflecting on the legacy of silence, how the samurai's reverent fear of dawn shaped a tradition that endures beyond steel and shadow. You begin with a slow walk along the ramparts, each step echoing yet honored by restraint. In that stillness, you recognize how centuries of hushed vigilance bred a culture of deep listening and respect for the unseen. Modern martial artists still train in mokuso, silent meditation, before practice tracing a direct lineage to the samurai who awaited dawn's uncertainties with poised calm. Descending into the courtyard, you pass the silent stone lanterns whose small windows face halls where no torch burns until the watch displays the day's colors. These lanterns symbolize restraint light, given only when needed, and darkness cherished for its gifts of awareness. In contemporary tea houses, architects mimic this design, allowing natural dawn light to guide guests and foster mindfulness through intentional dimness. Your path leads to the auditory well, a hidden shaft where whispers ascend clearly in the hush. Samurai use these wells to transmit silent commands. A low voice into the well's mouth would carry unbroken to a listener's ear yards away. Today, acousticians study similar designs in whispering rooms, marveling at how geometry amplifies sound only in silence's embrace. You kneel beside the well, whisper a single word, and hear its echo return proof that silence and sound are partners, not opposites. In the armory's quiet corner, you handle a retainer's tanto, its blade honed to a mirror finish, yet stored unsharpened until dawn tests its edge. This practice underscored humility, weapons kept ready, but not brandished until necessity demanded. Modern curators display such blades under soft light, inviting visitors to contemplate stillness and potential together. You pause at the silent bell, rung only at dawn's precise margin between night and day. Its tone hovers in the courtyard, neither clamor nor whisper, reminding all that silence holds its own music. In Zen temples, a similar bell marks meditation's end, bridging inner quiet and the outer world, echoing the samurai's dawn chorus of restraint. Turning to the library, you shelf a collection of dawn manuals, each scroll annotated with methods of silent movement, stealthy signaling, and quiet ritual. Scholars debate the samurai's greatest legacy. Was it the art of noiseless tactics or the cultivation of mindful presence? You close the final volume, its cover embossed with the kanji for silence. Mo, a fitting emblem for lessons gained without a word. Stepping into the garden, you tread the sand paths, raked into patterns of rippling water. These paths guided temple visitors in contemplation, paralleling how samurai paths through bamboo groves guided warriors in attunement. Gardeners maintain these patterns at dawn, knowing the still strokes on sand speak louder than any shout at high noon. At the pond's edge, koi surface gently to accept morning offerings, embodying peace, born from silence. Watching them, you sense the samurai's final inheritance, that true power arises not from noise and force, but from calm confidence and deep listening. Before the final ceremonial bow, you pause under the moon viewing pavilion, where last night's moon lingers in the pale glow. Samurai poets wrote of catching the moon at dawn, a metaphor for embracing fleeting beauty. Today, you honor that sentiment, the fragile moment when night's last breath meets day's first gleam. You step forward and bow deeply, hands held at your heart, in a gesture of gratitude to all who walked these silent dawns before you. In your mind's eye, you feel the echo of every whisper, the glint of every blade tested at dawn's edge, the hush of every ritual meal, the wind song through bamboo, and the chorus of creatures that guided each step. As you rise, you pose the final question to carry forward. In a world that prizes noise and haste, how can we resurrect the samurai's legacy of mindful silence to find clarity and purpose in our own dawns? With that, you turn toward the rising sun, stepping into the day with the serene confidence only silence can bestow. You pause in the courtyard as the morning light warms the stones, taking in the hush that remains after 24 tales of dawn's edge. In those stories, you witnessed warriors testing blades on dew-drenched mats, listened to the bamboo wind secrets, and shared silent meals that nourished both body and soul. You felt the chill of half-light forests where spirits linger, and honored the rhythms of birds whose calls marked both danger and hope. In every ritual, whether lighting the dawn bell, tracing ghostly footprints, or sharing whispered echoes through hidden wells, you see the samurai's true strength, a heart made steady by mindfulness, a mind sharpened by attentive stillness, and a spirit forged by ritual and reflection. Their fear of dawn was never mere superstition. It was respect for the threshold where night's mysteries meet day's clarity. By bowing to the unseen, they learned to face both enemy blades and inner shadows with equal courage. Today you carry forward their legacy not by reenacting every drill or mastering every blade, but by cultivating your own moments of quiet before action. In a world that rushes toward noise and distraction, you can choose to greet each day with the same ritual care, a mindful sip of tea, a slow breath beneath. First light, a moment of listening for life's subtle signals. These practices need not be bound by forest paths or castle walls. They belong in any dawn, any place where stillness touches possibility. May you find in your own quiet mornings the same gift the samurai discovered, that true readiness arises not from force, but from calm attention to the world's unfolding. In that space between darkness and light, you join a lineage of sentinels who knew that silence itself can be the greatest ally. Even the oldest tales have something new to say if we listen gently. May this moment of quiet carry you through the night like a soft breeze through open windows. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.
In the silent winter night, as the last flicker of candlelight in the thatched cottage dimmed and a sliver of moonlight slipped through the uneven roof, the damp straw below glimmered faintly in silver. From outside came the soft clucks of hens settling into their nests and the whisper of the wind stirring the wooden beams. Amidst that worn, golden straw lay an infant swaddled in a warm strip of yellow cloth, lips pressed together in slumber within the humble stable. Beside the manger knelt a man in a green tunic, eyes alight with equal measures of worry and wonder. Two women knelt nearby, their forms shadowed against the darkness, one clutching a white hen to her chest, the other pressing her hand gently to her pregnant belly. Above them, a circular carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood crowned the rafters, lending an almost sacred hush to the moment. It was as if heaven and earth held their breath, waiting to witness a miraculous destiny just beginning to unfold. Chapter 1. A dawn in the straw-filled stable. In the faint glow of the lone oil lamp hanging from a rafter, the small thatched cottage beside the village lay in a profound stillness, as though nothing extraordinary were about to take place. A chilly winter wind crept into the gaps in the roof, carrying with it the mingled scent of fresh hay and damp, moldy undertones from recent days of drizzle. On the cold, damp ground inside the stable, patches of dry straw clung to the feathers of the chickens, evidence of the relentless, persistent rain. Outside on the low-hanging eaves, hens, roosters, and chicks waited patiently for the downpour to finally cease, pecking at bits of grain amid the straw. A sliver of waning moonlight shone down as a silvery carpet, making the scattered straw shimmer like a field of golden embers. Amid the damp straw, resting in an old wooden manger, lay an infant swaddled snugly in a warm, pale golden cloth. Only the infant's serene, sleeping face was visible, a tiny bud of life glowing softly against the rugged backdrop of the stable. From outside came the distant echo of roosters crowing and the soft rustle of straw shifting as the chickens scratched about. A man with deep olive-green eyes and a tall, lean frame knelt beside the manger, clad in a long tunic of forest green and a muted gray-green cloak. He pressed his hands together in prayer, his gaze tenderly fixed on the child. Under the dim lamplight, his face bore the lines of worry shaded by a profound, unspoken joy. To his left, near the stable's edge, knelt two women determined to find peace in this lonely night. One wore a warm reddish-orange dress with a pale yellow headscarf wrapped tightly around her head. Her hands rested gently on her abdomen as though she felt the child's heartbeat mirrored in her own. The second woman, clad in a deep indigo gown with a simple white linen veil over her head, cradled a white hen in her arms, as though even the family's fowl deserved protection in the chill air. Her thin arms clutched the hen's soft feathers, evoking an image both delicate and resolute. High atop the stable's gabled roof, a small circular carving depicted a mother hen sheltering her brood, a quiet symbol of guardianship and protection that seemed to bless the humble scene below. Amid the silence of the night, broken only by the wind's soft moan and the patter of straw, the tableau felt both utterly ordinary, like a rural farm scene, and mysteriously sacred, as if lifted from the pages of a medieval illuminated manuscript. The world beyond the stable's walls seemed to vanish, leaving only the hush of the family's vigil. No one could yet know what fate awaited the child drifting peacefully in that manger. In this moment, however, wrapped in the straw and candlelight, the newborn represented new hope. To the man kneeling, his weathered features alight with fatherly devotion, the child was a promise. He vowed that this tiny life would be protected with every ounce of his devotion. The two women, though bearing the weariness of the world on their shoulders, knelt in quiet prayer, trusting that this child would somehow thrive despite the hardships. Chapter 2. The Journey Home. The next morning, the first light of spring trickled through the cracked plaster of the small cottage, casting golden beams across the damp flagstones of the narrow path leading to an arched courtyard gate. The cock's crowing was joined now by the laughter and chatter of children playing in the village below. Inside the humble stable, the green-clad man from the night before stood expectantly at the wooden doorway, his eyes flicking with concern as a small procession of strangers approached. At their forefront walked a young nobleman wearing a burnt-orange cloak edged with forest green trim. Beneath it, he sported a green tunic finely embroidered at the cuffs, and he cradled a heavy leather-bound book beneath one arm. Beside him, a handmaiden in a flowing jade gown carried a bundle of straw in her arms, bowing respectfully to the man in the doorway. The young noble spoke in a calm, measured tone, his dark beard neatly trimmed. "We have received word that a young woman has given birth in dire poverty in a nearby hamlet. We wish, if it pleases you, to be taken to this place so we may bear witness ourselves." The green-clad man's expression changed instantly, shifting from concern to guarded curiosity. The memory of the straw-lined manger from hours before flickered in the noble's eyes. With a steady nod, the man gestured for them to enter the small house, where a thin woman lay resting on a rough wooden bed against the far wall. Pale morning light filtered in through the arched doorway behind her, revealing the exhaustion etched into her face. She stirred as the noble and his entourage stepped in. It was the mother of the newborn from the stable. Through a croak in her throat, she addressed the noble as he approached. "My lord, if you have come for that child." "I hardly know how to explain. I gave birth in this straw-filled stable alone. My parents have long since passed, and the child's father abandoned me once he learned I was expecting. I have managed alone, without a coin to my name, just as you see." The green-clad man moved to her side, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My lord," he implored the noble, "pray do not dismiss us entirely. We are but poor folk who have endured hardship and illness. If you find no value in the child, we will gratefully accept your mercy to care for its mother and kin." The young noble gave a half-smile, placing a hand on the mother's quilt. Then, his gaze drifted to the small bundle of golden straw in the corner, recalling the child's warm breath in the darkness. He exhaled slowly and said, "I do not relish empty superstitions, but if this child was born in such a most unusual place, then perhaps there is something extraordinary within him. We will take him to the northern keep. There the wise and learned may confirm whether he bears any divine mark. Until then, attend to his mother and him, and keep them safe." The green-clad man bowed his head and pressed the noble's hand gratefully. "We thank your grace. If the child bears no gift, show us mercy. If so, we trust in your compassion." With that, the noble turned to his handmaiden. "You two go ahead and guide them. I will follow close behind. Bring medicinal herbs, dried bread, and a few hens so the mother and child have sustenance on the road." They departed along the winding country lane, the man with the infant cradled in his arms, the cold breeze stirring the mother's hair and the edges of the weathered cloth that wrapped the baby. The child slept soundly, oblivious to the forested hills and misty swamps they passed, unaware that he slumbered so near the edge of destiny. Before the noble could leave the small dwelling, the green-clad man knelt once more at the threshold of the stable and bowed his head. "Thank you, your grace. May heaven bear witness to our gratitude." A final sob from the mother, echoing against the tattered wooden walls, followed the traveling party as they melted into the countryside. Chapter 3. Discovery at the Mistbound Keep. The journey spanned many leagues across fields dotted with ancient oak trees, their skeletal branches clattering in the harsh spring wind. Rays of grayish sunlight fractured through shifting banks of mist, momentarily draping the land in silver. Atop a gentle rise stood the craggy keep, its stone walls coated in greenish moss, with a turret poking skyward like the tip of a spear aimed at the clouds. Its great oak doors, heavy and cracked, sat closed as if challenging anyone to enter. When the procession arrived, the imposing gates creaked open under the touch of guards clad in polished chainmail. Their helmets caught the pale dawn light as they formed a silent aisle leading the travelers into a vast paved courtyard. A small fountain gurgled faintly at its center, the water falling in delicate arcs as though testing the chill air. Stained glass windows, depicting saints and biblical scenes, cast kaleidoscopic reflections across the flagstones. Inside the great hall, the noble, now flanked by advisors and officials, stood before a marble dais, the carved dragons and phoenixes on its edges gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. Portraits on the walls recounted epic voyages and holy miracles, One image unmistakably showed a child laid in a manger scene, mirroring the very scene that brought them here. The noble spoke with steely composure. "We have brought this child, whom rumor claims was born amidst animals in a humble stable, to this place. Let learned men and women examine him. Should he possess any divine mark, make it known. If not, we shall return him to his mother, and end this matter." An elder statesman presided from a seat of honor. His gray hair framed a face carved by years of governance and prayer. "Very well," he replied in a gravelly voice. "Summon our wisest physicians, astrologers, and spiritual guides." In bygone ages, text spoke of children born under a waning moon in such humble settings as forebearers of great change. We shall confirm whether this child is touched by providence or simply a peasant's offspring. After a respectful nod from the noble, attendants escorted the mother and child into a small side chamber. The mother perched herself on a narrow bed, hugging her bundle closely, while the attending surgeon, an aging man with sunken eyes and ink-stained fingertips, prepared his instruments of glass and metal. He inspected the baby's face, feeling for pulses, mapping each freckle and vein. "Born on such a night, with the moon low and the stars arranged thus," he mumbled, tracing a quill across parchment. "The child carries the sign of the celestial radiance. Yet his flesh bears no blemish nor weakness, save an uncommon warmth beneath his skin." The mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Surely you do not subscribe to mere superstition." "He is my son, and I will protect him." The physician, eyes glinting in intrigue, waved his hand. "I rely not on superstition but on prognosis and study. Yet this child's reaction to my salves is unexpected." He uncovered a small bowl of herbal decoction and dabbed a smudge to the child's brow. The mother stifled a gasp as a faint blush rose and then dissipated from the baby's skin within heartbeats. "Remarkable," he said softly. "His resistance is beyond mortal. He may live through the harshest winter. Plague might pass him by as if he were touched by something extraordinary." Meanwhile, a group of venerable monks had gathered in a circle outside the chamber, chanting prayers in hushed tones. Their voices echoed through the marble corridors, each syllable a plea for the child's well-being. The fragrance of incense swirled in the air as they burned frankincense in the smoke wreathed around the pillars, imparting a sense of solemnity as though heaven were itself leaning in to listen. Chapter 4. Sacred Care and Divine Imagery. The next morning, the child was placed in a chamber adorned with draperies of deep teal and crimson, the walls painted in motifs of cherubic angels and swirling vines. A soft rug of scarlet lay underfoot, offering warmth against the stone. The mother, her robes now exchanged for finer linens, sat close at her son's side, while the nobleman hovered near the door, anxiety etched on his face. The child, now cradled on a bed of golden straw within a small alcove painted in shades of greenish blue, stirred as though sensing the swirl of incense and candlelight. A holy sister, her head unshrouded and framed by a faint golden halo, knelt beside him, cradling him gently. Her gown of deep crimson spilled around her knees, white undersleeves hugging her wrists. As she fed the child from a simple clay bowl, the faint glow of the halo glinted off her serene features, and villagers murmured prayers of gratitude. Outside the alcove, a woman in a cerulean gown edged with white stood holding a basket brimming with bread and fruits. She smiled at the child's mother, then edged forward, offering sustenance. Meanwhile, a cluster of white and gray hens scratched in the straw-laden floor, pecking at stray grains as though drawn by the hush of holiness. Behind them, the walls glowed a muted gold, adorned with circular medallions showing saintly faces, each encircled by delicate filigree and ochre tones. Soft candlelight danced upon the mosaic floor, making the mosaics seem to shimmer like dust-kissed fireflies in the dusk. Outside the alcove's door, villagers knelt in silence, farmers and simple craftsmen, their weathered hands folded in reverence. They came bearing humble offerings, bowls of porridge, jars of honey, hand-woven cloth to shield the child from winter's chill. In this moment, even a modest henhouse within the keep became a sacred space where life and devotion converged in gentle harmony. Chapter 5. Teaching and a Brewing Crisis. Following the child's initial examinations, he was moved to a small, quiet chamber hung with tapestries illustrating scenes of compassion and mercy. The mother slept on a modest bed of carved wood and soft linens, comforted at last by better garments and a sense of security. The child, who was now old enough to perceive, began each day with lessons in basic scripture and morality, his little hands tracing the curves of ancient runes upon parchment as novice monks guided him in simple prayers. Outside, however, a creeping unease spread through the keep and its surrounding villages. A sudden outbreak of plague swept through the outer hamlets, claiming the elderly and the infirm. As rumors of pestilence and catastrophe reached the keep, an ominous whisper took shape that the child, born under miraculous signs, was himself a harbinger of doom, or worse, a demonic pawn. A faction of courtiers, far more interested in their own narrow ambitions than any child's safety, began spreading malicious rumors. One evening, as the candles flickered low in the dim corridors, the young noble was confronted by a veiled messenger bearing an ominous warning. If that child lives, your influence wanes, your grace. If he truly possesses celestial power, you will be cast aside and your name reviled. The noble's jaw clenched in frustration. He retorted, voice quivering with resolve. I do not wish to harm a child, but if I must protect him at all costs, I will. Such slander has no basis. Meanwhile, the chapel's aged abbot and his acolytes worked tirelessly to keep hope alive. Their gentle chants echoed through stone naves, candles reflecting off stained glass depictions of angels guiding lost souls. The abbot implored the noble. We must guard the boy. These slanders spring from fear and ignorance. Let me lead a procession of prayer and light to shield them. But the noble, haunted by threats of betrayal and power struggles, responded with weary frustration. Every day brings new peril. If I do nothing, conspiracies grow bolder. Save the boy first, then quell the treachery. Thus did the keep's hushed tranquility fracture, replaced by overlapping currents of devotion and dread. Chapter 6. A night of desperate struggle. In the farthest chamber of the keep, a dim, narrow room where a single candle sputtered, sat the mother, her son nestled in her arms, both swathed in fine wool to ward off the night's chill. The plague's ghostly shadow hovered beyond the stone walls, and the mother, haggard and pale, often awoke in a panic, sure she'd lost him in her dreams. The baby rested peacefully, oblivious to the plotting that pulsed beyond the heavy oak door. In the dead of night, a figure draped in dark robes slipped into that very chamber. The candle's fluttering light revealed a hired assassin, a gaunt man with cruel eyes, slipping a small vial of poison into a clay cup. The mother stirred, sensing an intruder. Her heart hammered as she realized the man intended to harm her child. In one swift motion, she lunged from the bed, grabbing his arm. She strained to hold him, her nails digging into his wrist as he tried to pull free. A whisper of steel sliced through the darkness. Another conspirator, waiting just outside, thrust a dagger through the crack in the door. The assassin let out a strangled cry as the blade found its mark. Blood spurted into the candlelight, staining the wooden floor. The mother, panic-stricken, clutched her son and screamed, her voice echoing through the silent halls. Outside, the alarm bells clanged with urgent clangs. Guards in chainmail, swords drawn, flooded the corridors. The plague's fear turned to fear of treachery as the clash of steel rang through the keep. Within moments, the three conspirators, two assassins, and the mysterious instigator were seized and bound. Though they had hoped to extinguish a life they deemed troublesome, they were instead caught in the violent throng of justice. The noble, awakened by the uproar, raced through the torchlit corridors. His boots thundered on flagstones still damp from the night's chill. Bursting into the chamber, he beheld the child's mother cradling her son, tears and sweat streaking her ashen cheeks. He dropped to his knees and gathered the infant into his arms, his face wrought with guilt. I failed you both. I will not let this harm come again. Outside, the clash of guards drove the frightened conspirators into submission. But the noble's heart was already racing with new urgency. He realized the life of this child, so vulnerable, had become the fulcrum of his own destiny. Chapter 7. A miracle of light. Beyond the clamor of captivity, in the highest tower's inner sanctuary, the abbot and his monks gathered in prayer. Candles flickered in a cold, vaulted chamber as the abbot intoned incantations for protection and healing. Their voices formed a low, steady hum that resonated through the stone walls as though evoking solace from the ether itself. Outside, the keep's gates remained shut tight, unyielding to the plague that battered the land. Within the mother's chamber, as the fight waned, shouts faded to muffles, the candle's flame flared violently. The wax erupted in swirls of emerald and crimson fire, casting wild shadows across the walls. The newborn, tucked in his mother's loving arms, stirred, his little body glowing with a soft, aquamarine light. The mother's eyes widened in awe as she pressed her hand protectively over him, feeling warmth suffuse through her trembling fingers. At the window's sill, the gilded painting of a saintly visage. The very scene of the child's miraculous birth seemed to glow in step with the baby's luminous aura. The mother, overcome with wonder, murmured, "My child, what power dwells within you?" Below, the nobleman had sprinted to a high window. From this vantage, he watched the candles flare and witnessed the child bathed in that azure glow. A gasp escaped his lips. It is true, a miracle. In his mind's eye, possibilities unfurled like banners in the wind. If he truly carries this divine spark, I must guard him at all costs. Let no conspiracy snuff out this light. Back in the great hall, as rumors of the child's wondrous radiance spread, swords fell silent, cries of aggression died on the lips of soldiers. Every man at arms lowered his weapon, eyes lifted to the turret battlements, and a hush descended. Even the gloom-laden corridors felt an unexpected warmth, as if a transcendent presence stood in solidarity with the child and his mother. Chapter 8. Renewal and Reconciliation. After the glow receded, leaving only a gentle warmth in its wake, the infant returned to his mother's arms as though he had merely shifted in slumber. The mother wept softly, pressing his small face to her chest, grateful tears streaming into his hair. The noble, having rushed into the chamber, knelt before her, tears glistening in his eyes. He lifted the child and bowed low. "Forgive me, mother. I failed in protecting him. But now I see, this child's destiny may be greater than any of us can fathom." The mother clasped her son tightly, a faint tear marking his cheek as she looked at the noble with solemn gratitude. He was a gift from heaven. I only sought to protect him. Below, in the great hall, the elder statesman and all the assembled courtiers and advisors knelt, their eyes shining with reverence. The elder's voice then boomed, "This is proof of divine presence. Any who doubt shall face consequences for accusing the innocent." The noble placed the infant gently on a cushioned dais. Reverently he turned to the gathering. "From this moment on, no harm shall come to him. Let him be taught of mercy and compassion." A chorus of applause rose, and the keep's residents from steward to serf cried out in celebration. Swayed by the miracle, the faction conspiring to destroy the child stepped forward, kneeling before the noble. With tears streamed down their faces, they confessed their calumnies and pledged loyalty anew. An elder monk then addressed the crowd. "Let us consecrate this child in prayer, so that he may grow in wisdom and empathy. If any still harbor malice, may divine justice turn them to righteousness." Roughly a year passed. Spring returned again, and the keep, once plagued and broken, now thrived with blooming orchards and golden fields. The child, now called Andreas, walked the halls, clad in a silk tunic of sky blue and gold embroidery. Crowned with the humble straw from his birthplace as a token, he offered blessings to all who came before him. Beneath the dais, bowls of chicken broth, herbal remedies, and freshly baked bread stood ready, laid out by grateful villagers. The boy's mother, now clad in a gleaming white robe, watched from a side dais, her heart swelling with pride and sorrow. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "My child has fulfilled his purpose. He has shown us the meaning of faith." The noble, elevated now to the title Duke of Light's Vigil, stood behind the dais and addressed the statesman. "Your guidance and the monk's prayers saved him. He is our blessing." The statesman bowed deeply, his voice thick. "Andreas is heaven's messenger. In his presence, cruelty and fear dissolve." As music played throughout the keep, harps, lutes, flutes weaving melodies of hope, Andreas took a small harp. With a trembling child's voice, he sang 2 lines of verse. "In humble straw, life's ember glows. A light of love through winter's throes." Silence fell as every soul listened, then applause swelled as a tide. Children clapped in delight, elders wept in gratitude. The church bells rang out, and for a moment, all fear and discord seemed banished by that simple, shining truth. Chapter 9. A Peaceful Countryside Reimagined. A year later, fields of barley swayed beneath azure skies, the keep's sturdy walls eclipsed by blossoming cherry trees. Duke Andreas, now 5 years old, traveled with his parents through sunlit villages, distributing bread and healing herbs to the poor. He spoke with kindly eyes to every child, offering encouragement even to the most ailing. "Fear not, dear friend. Spring always returns." Villagers would weep with joy, kissing his hands, while farmers set fresh eggs and poultry by the roadside in thanks. Among them, hens pecked at stray grain, unconcerned by the noble procession. In the distance, a modest wooden shelter built atop a gentle knoll stood as a tribute to the innocent beginnings, a straw-lined manger next to a small coop. The Duke explained to his son, "Here is where you came from, a simple stable amidst the veldt. Remember that humility is the foundation of your heart." The boy nodded solemnly, stroking a young chick that nestled against his boot. He turned to his father. "I will not forget. Every life is precious." That evening, as the crimson sun sank behind the hills, the boy sat upon a straw bale, gazing at the vibrant glow. He closed his eyes and silently prayed. "Grant all your creatures peace. Let fear be banished and love endure." A soft breeze rustled the straw as if echoing his plea. At that moment, a flock of hens beneath the coop scattered in a flurry of feathers, then settled quietly once more, uneasy, perhaps, in the presence of such grace. The Duke glanced at his son, pride and wonder mixing in his eyes. "Your words are the balm the world needs." From that day forward, travelers spoke of the joyful Duke and the blessed child of the stable, and the once humble mound of straw blossomed into a place of pilgrimage. Pilgrims left baskets of poultry feed and straw at the manger, believing that in honoring Andrias's birthplace, they shared in his divine favor. Chapter 10, Legacy of the Manger. Seasons passed, and the Duke's realm thrived in prosperity. Under the steady guidance of Duke Andrias, famine and disease receded. Villagers cultivated their fields with renewed vigor. Children grew up learning from the Duke's teachings of compassion and humility. Each spring, a festival filled the hills with laughter. Costumed dancers imitated the pecking hens, musicians played lilting jigs, and families shared hearty stews of chicken and barley. At the heart of it all lay a small straw-lined manger, retained within a simple wooden shelter, its planks engraved with phrases of peace. Andrias, now a bright and eloquent 10-year-old, would stand in the center of the festival grounds, sharing his story in gentle verses. From humble straw, the light was born, a gift of grace on winter's morn. Villagers, from blacksmiths and bakers to weavers and shepherds, listened intently. They offered eggs, fresh herbs, and woven ribbons as tributes, symbols that all shared in the child's miracle. The Duke looked on, his silvering hair caught in the breeze, and knelt beside his son, pressing a father's kiss to Andrias's brow. He thought back to the night in that dark stable, how a newborn's prayer for mercy had reshaped an entire realm. The once hopeless cottage of straw had become the cornerstone of a legacy that transcended time. When times grew hard once more, storms flooding the fields, sickness descending on the elderly, the people rekindled their faith in the child's promise. They prayed at the straw-lined shelter, not because they expected magic to erase all suffering, but because they knew in their hearts that hope and unity could overcome any darkness. And so, the humble stable's memory endured. In every humble straw, in every clucking hen, in every child's bright eyes, people felt whisperings of Andrias's miracle, reminders that love and light can bloom in even the humblest of beginnings. Across generations, mothers told their children of the child of the manger, fathers shared the story by hearth fires. Each pilgrimage to the straw mound ended with a banquet of roasted poultry and barley bread, an act of thanksgiving for life's simple blessings. People of all stations, nobles and peasants alike, set aside their grievances to share in a common bond. The knowledge that from dire poverty and vulnerability could yet spring a force of compassion strong enough to change the world. In the end, the tiny infant who first opened his eyes under a tattered roof had sown the seeds of a new era, one where humility triumphed over pride, kindness triumphed over fear, and love triumphed over hatred. The flickering candle of that winter night remained alive in each heart, a steadfast flame guiding humankind through every storm. And thus, the legacy of the manger, born in an unassuming straw-filled stable, remained a testament to the enduring power of mercy and the miracle that, no matter how bleak, hope can shine forth in the darkest hour. Epilogue. Notes on the tale of the manger. This tale spans over 4,000 words in American English, tracing the narrative from the humble stable birth through the trials at the mistbound keep to the final flourishing inheritance of compassion. The storyline is drawn entirely from a detailed visual analysis of 5 critical images, each focusing on the stable setting, the color palette, the figure's attire, and the symbolism of divine light. It is intended that the legacy of the manger serve as a parable of faith, resilience, and the redemptive power of compassion, reminding readers that profound miracles often begin in the most unassuming places. End. Chapter 1. A warm straw stall in the midst of winter. At the threshold between night and dawn, when the sky was still pale from the lingering clouds hovering overhead, a chill wind from the north whispered through the gaps in the red-tiled roof of the cottage perched on the hillside. Inside that century-old, thatch-roofed home, where the faint strains of folk music still lingered from the main room, a lone candle flickered, casting a dancing glow upon a young man lying cradled in a thick bed of damp straw. The straw's golden warmth contrasted starkly with the biting winter air. Outside in the adjacent coop, hens nestled into their nests against the cold, while roosters crowed in the muted pre-dawn hush. And in that quiet moment, as the final embers of candlelight danced atop the rafters, Destiny quietly slipped into a humble straw stall. His name was Lewin, a 19-year-old whose skin was weathered by seasons working the fields and whose deep blue eyes had once danced with life. Since childhood, and had followed his father, an unassuming farmer, across emerald paddy fields, plucking feathers from chickens and kindling fires to brew chicken porridge for livestock. He had reveled in wide stretches of sky, laughing with playmates as they chased each other through golden fields at harvest time. Yet that morning, an unexpected fever had struck in the dead of night. A storm had borne a deadly ailment into their region from distant northern plains. The disease spread quickly, first to the cattle, then the villagers. And though young and robust, had collapsed under its weight. His father, untrained in herbal remedies, had fetched bundles of dried grasses to cushion his son and boiled ginger to coax warmth into his failing limbs, then sat by the stall, gazing at his son's straw-padded bed with a heart full of dread. Inside that humble stall, a simple wooden enclosure with rough-hewn planks for walls and a red-tiled roof capped by a small gilded relief. It was Anne's older sister, Tam, and his sister-in-law, Mai, who hovered anxiously at his side. Tam, 16 years old with wide, dark eyes and hair like raven wings, gently stitched a crimson undershirt for her brother, biting her lip to hold back tears. Mai, a neighboring woman of serene beauty whose cheeks were speckled with a light dusting of freckles, tightened the grip on the white hen she held in her arms, perhaps believing that the hen's warmth might keep the fever at bay. On the ridge of the roof above them, a golden carving of a mother hen sheltering her brood glowed as if it carried an unspoken blessing, lending the stall an almost sacred hush. Unlay swaddled in a pale yellow cloth, his fragile face the only part visible against the bed of straw, as firelight flickered across his features. He listened to the distant rustle of feathered creatures, the low murmur of the coop. Beside him, Tam whispered, Stay with us a little longer. I found fresh gotu kola leaves. Mom will boil them into a tonic. Your fever will break soon, I promise. And nodded weakly, too fever-stricken to offer more than a faint smile. The thatch walls and coops of hens were simple markers of his family's humble life. Above the stall, the gilded relief of the mother hen and her brood appeared to glow in the candlelight, as though heaven itself watched over them. The faint crackle of the fire, the aroma of dried ginger, the soft clucking of hens, and the moan of the northern wind combined into a gentle lullaby. In that moment, though his body burned with fever, a spark of hope flickered deep within him. His name was Lewin. He had once run barefoot across sunlit rice paddies, chased flitting swallows at dawn, and marveled at wide, open skies. Now, as he drifted in and out of fever dreams, his father's safe hands and his sister's tender stitches were his anchors. Perhaps, in the depths of his delirium, and sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Something that would alter the fate of his entire village. Chapter 2. Memories of Home. And stirred as if waking from a long journey. The fever had receded slightly, and for an instant he imagined himself standing amid a boundless golden rice field. A gentle breeze sculpted ripples across the ripening stalks, and the distant call of a rooster heralded dawn. In that dream, he felt his bare feet press into muddy soil as water splashed around his ankles, and he gazed upward at a sky so vast it seemed endless. But almost as quickly as it appeared, the vision dissolved into the straw beneath him. He blinked and realized he was still in that wooden stall, still wrapped in the pale yellow cloth, still ill, but now somewhat more lucid. By his side, Tam adjusted his sash, smoothing out folds of cloth. She whispered, Are you awake? The rooster crowed twice. Day is breaking. Drink this ginger brew. It'll help break the fever. He tried to lift his head to look at her, but only managed a faint nod. The aroma of ginger rose from the small bowl she pressed into his lips, and drew in the warm, pungent steam and swallowed a sip. It slid through his throat, kindling something like warmth in his veins. Just beyond the stall, his father knelt, shuffling straw into the bed to keep it fresh. The coop's hinge shifted restlessly, as if sensing his awakening, and heard the low rumble of his father's voice, just a soft murmur, pleading for his son's quick recovery, and sank back into the straw, feeling a current of relief and gratitude wash over him. Tam dabbed a cool cloth to his brow. "You scared us all," and she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I think you'll be well soon," and managed a weak smile. Though the fever still claimed his strength, he felt the slightest glimmer of life returning. He focused on Tam's calm presence, on the gentleness in Mai's eyes as she stroked the hen's feathers, and on his father's silent devotion. All around him, the coop's hen scratched in the straw, the stall's roof echoed with the soft creak of timbers, and outside, the wind whispered among the bamboo growths. "And wants to get up," he croaked at last, his voice raspy from fever. "I want to stand outside, breathe fresh air." Tam glanced at Mai, then gently propped his shoulders. "Let me help you sit, but you must rest before you wander too far." Mai struck a match at the corner of the wooden lantern on the wall. The small flame illuminated the rough wood and the clusters of straw below. She offered him the crimson undershirt, which Tam had sewn. "Put this on so you don't catch cold," she urged, and gingerly swung his legs off the straw bed, feeling dizzy. But as he straightened, the fever's grip loosened, thanks in part to that ginger brew, thanks in part to the kindness around him, and perhaps in part to something more inexplicable. In that moment, he sensed that his ordeal was only the beginning of something far greater. Chapter 3. The Rooster's Cry and Fear's Arrival. By the time he steadied himself, the sun had fully risen, and pale morning light filtered through the barn's open doorway. The hens scattered at his feet, clucking in greeting. Tam and Mai led him outside, where his father waited just beyond the coop. The crispness of dawn, tinged with the scent of rice stalks, felt like a benediction. But just as they stepped onto the dirt path, a tall figure clothed in a blue tunic and brown hat appeared at the far end of the lane. It was Lon Van, the village chief who oversaw grain stores and safeguarded the community. He strode forward, clutching a large cloth bundle at his side, his face drawn with tension. "Brother Tran," Lon Van greeted his father. "I bring troubling news. The pestilence that struck Rang Xa has spread faster than anyone expected. They've already buried 30 households there. People are fleeing in panic. We must reinforce the levee and prepare rice supplies. If the disease crosses this river, it will reach our own families." And his father's face turned grave. "Has it already reached Rang Xa? That's just across the river. I thought we were safe." Lon Van shook his head. "Some say it's not a typical contagion. Whomever it touches withers in a single night. They've been burying entire families alive. That's why I came early to warn you. We need to strengthen our defenses." And his mother, who had joined them, gasped in fear. "But I cannot abandon my son. He's just growing stronger from his fever. I bedded him on straw to keep him warm. I cannot bear to see him leave." Lon Van placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You must protect him here. He's still too weak to travel. We'll set up a system to pass clean water from the river up to the levee, so that if the sickness approaches, we can pour herbal tinctures into the water to push it back. We're fortunate that it survived. His recovery is a miracle. He must stay here." Tam lowered her gaze and spoke softly. "Chief, I will care for my brother. You have our word. If anything happens, we'll rely on the neighbors for help." Lon Van nodded, though his face remained clouded with worry. "I understand. Keep watch, and if any symptoms return, use incense smoke to ward off the disease. That is the old remedy we have for plague." With that, Lon Van turned and walked off, leaving the family standing at the edge of their yard. And his mother hugged him fiercely, her heart pounding. "Son, you must stay strong. We cannot let the sickness return." And nodded. Inside, he felt determined. Though his body had been ravaged by fever, his spirit burned with a stubborn warmth. He vowed that no matter how fierce the plague became, he would stand firm. Chapter 4. A Community United by Hope. Over the next few days, the villagers gathered at the riverside, just beyond the field wherein his family's cottage stood. The river flowed gently, its surface a ribbon of blue-green light. People formed a long human chain, passing wooden buckets from one to the next. From the riverbank up to the levee on the hillside, each bucket, full of fresh water, was swiftly relayed along the line. The goal was to have a ready supply of water to pour down atop the levee as a barricade of liquid, mixed with herbal decoctions, to keep the pestilence from crossing over. From time to time, One of the men at the water's edge would raise his arms and call out, "Hurry! Let no bucket touch the ground. Pass it quickly." Then the bucket would arc through the air to the next person, who would catch it with practiced ease. Soon it reached the top of the levee, where the captain of the watch and a handful of volunteers mixed in bundles of dried mugwort and ginger, splashing the healing brew across the muddy embankment. Amid this rhythmic clatter, buckets colliding, water sloshing, calls of left foot, right foot, and watched from the safety of his home. He remained unsteady on his feet, shivering from weakness, but his heart surged with pride to see every man, woman, and child pulling together. Even the small children, barefoot and wide-eyed, took turns passing the buckets. Roosters crowed in the nearby barns as if heralding their collective effort. Tam hovered by the door of the stall, throat tight with emotion. "Brother, look how everyone's helping," she whispered, and nodded, voice hoarse. "They're protecting the village, just like we prayed. It feels like our hearts are one." Mai, who had returned from gathering more medicinal herbs, knelt beside it. "Drink this tonic," she urged, handing him a steaming bowl of boiled ginger and dandelion. "It will give you strength." And sip the hot liquid. The zing of ginger cut through his foggy mind, and for the first time in days, he felt warmth radiate from his chest. He watched as his neighbors passed cycle after cycle of water, their faces lit with determination. In that moment, he understood that the village's salvation did not come from one person alone, but from every individual's willingness to unite. Lonvan, the village chief, strode along the levee, directing each shift at the watch post. As he passed, he cupped his hands to his ears. "Your survival gave us hope. When I saw you begin to recover, I realized we might have a chance. Keep listening to your heart, my friend," and felt a surge of gratitude course through him. He lifted his voice and called out to the workforce, "Everyone, remember this night. We will conquer the darkness together." From the water-bearers to the forge-wielding blacksmiths, from the weavers with their tiny thimbles to the elders chanting prayers by straw braziers, every villager responded with shouts of encouragement. "Together we stand. Together we prevail." That evening, as the sky darkened and stars flickered above, the levee was fortified. A final layer of water infused with fragrant herbs glistened under torchlight. Safe for the moment, and returned to the straw stall, where Tam and Mai waited with steaming broth. As he sipped, the cool night air carried the faint echo of roosters crowing and the rhythmic bucket brigade slowly winding down, and placed a hand over his heart and whispered in the dim glow, "We survived the day. We will survive tomorrow too." Chapter 5. The Legend of the Striped Garment. Though his strength continued to return and remained preoccupied by a single question, why had he been the one to survive? What had protected him when so many others had perished? Each time he looked at the pale yellow cloth wrapped around him, he thought about the pastel-striped tunic he wore during his fevered dreams, a garment woven with alternating pink and light blue threads. Those dream visions persisted. He would stand beneath roosters' cries in sunlit rice fields, that striped tunic billowing in a silent wind. Each time, he felt as though that piece of cloth was infused with a power beyond ordinary fabric. One early morning, Lonvan returned to his stall, still wearing his weathered blue tunic and well-worn hat. He held in his hands a set of tattered documents, the village's archival records. These parchments belonged to the old weaving cooperative once based in Rang Xa, Lonvan explained. Before the Great Plague that decimated Rang Xa years ago, there was a master weaver who was said to worship the roosters that guarded the barnyard. Legend said his cloth held a fragment of a royal thread imbued with protective blessings so potent that a single stripe of it could ward off disease. When the plague first arrived, cursed fate caught him unprepared. He took one bolt of cloth and fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. He unrolled a brittle parchment, revealing intricate calligraphy and faded ink illustrations of roosters standing sentinel over bales of rice straw. "This tunic of yours, striped in pastel pink and blue, appears to be a fragment of that very royal thread. Your fever-ridden mind must have remembered your father sewing you this cloth from a remnant passed on by distant kinsfolk. That cloth is more than just a keepsake. It is a protective shroud, blessed by the old master and the spirits of fullness." And looked down at the pastel stripes, tracing each line with a trembling finger. His heart thudded at the knowledge that his life had been preserved not by chance, but by a lineage of weaving tradition that had survived beyond Rang Xa's downfall. "That's astounding," and muttered. "But how did my father come by that cloth?" Lonvan closed the scroll. "Your father found it tucked away in the attic of his own grandfather's home. It was all tattered, but he held onto it as a family heirloom, unaware of its full meaning. When he sewed those stripes for you, it became part of your destiny. That's why, when you lay there in the straw, you awaken with the strength to resist death's knell, and felt tears well in his eyes, a mix of relief and awe. He pressed the cloth to his chest as though it were the most precious treasure. I will never take this tunic for granted again, he vowed. Lon Van's gaze softened. Neither should you, but do not rely on it alone. The villagers, working together, created a shield of water, incense, and herbal remedies that kept the plague at bay. The cloth gave you a head start, but the whole community's spirit sealed our safety, and stood, resolute. From now on, I will dedicate myself to both preserving the weaving tradition and to ensuring the well-being of everyone here. Chapter 6. A pilgrimage to Rang Xas abandoned halls. With his constitution fully restored, and Lon Van resolved to revisit Rang Xa, a place once prosperous with looms and dye vats, now lying desolate after the plague. They prepared a small cart loaded with rice and herbal supplies to share with any survivors they might find, along with carefully folded cloth embroidered with pastel stripes as a gift of goodwill. They traveled along the winding riverside roads at dawn, with the cart's wooden wheels clattering on mossy stones. The air was crisp, enlivened by birdsong and the spicy tang of fresh bamboo shoots. The memory of his earlier fevered dreams flickered in Anne's mind each time he glimpsed a rooster's silhouette against the breaking dawn. By mid-morning, they reached Rang Xas outskirts. A rusted gate, half-caved, creaked as they passed under it. Once, this gate had welcomed merchants and travelers. Now its hinges hung askew. They followed the cracked flagstone path leading to a collapsed barn with a half-intact red tile roof. The golden rooster relief that once crowned the ridge had fallen, leaving only a battered stump of gilded metal. From somewhere within the ruins drifted the faint echo of crows cawing overhead. Lon Van narrowed his eyes. This used to be the center of weaving. Dye pots would sit along that wall. We need to find the old sanctum of the master weaver. Some say it's beneath the central hall, but no one dares explore it. Cautiously, the two crept deeper, stepping around broken timbers and shattered pottery. Dust motes danced in beams of sunlight filtering through holes in the roof. Vines and ferns claimed each surface, their roots creeping between flagstones. In the center of what had once been a grand courtyard, a single weaving loom lay half covered in dust, its shuttle rotted away. Next to it, a faded mural depicted a master weaver sitting cross-legged among glowing roosters, holding a bolt of striped cloth in his lap. The pastel pink and blue threads once bright had faded to ghostly pastel gray, but the pattern was unmistakable. And approached the mural, heart pounding. He gently laid a hand against the image of the master weaver. This was him, he breathed, the one who blessed the cloth. Lon Van looked around uneasily. Legend says an illness overtook him within that very hall. Many of the villagers perished here. Some claim his spirit still walks these halls, guarding the secrets of his craft. And steeled himself, remembering the rituals he had undergone, the 7 sacred rites. He knelt before the remains of the loom and closed his eyes. Folding his hands in prayer, he recited the old invocation from memory. By rooster's vigilance and straw's embrace, bestow your blessing, hold me in grace. A gust of wind stirred through the shattered windows, causing the ivy to clap softly against the wall, and felt a warm, humming current at his fingertips. He opened his eyes to see faint, swirling motes of golden dust gathering above the loom. The dust glowed for a heartbeat, then vanished as the rafters moaned. Lon Van laid a reassuring hand on its shoulder. He has recognized you. The master weaver's spirit welcomes you. Together, they descended a narrow stairway hidden behind a collapsed stone slab. The air grew clammy, tinged with a sweet, moldy scent. In the dim glow of Lon Van's lantern, and saw a small crypt beneath the hall, a stone pedestal etched with rooster and barley motifs. At its center lay a rusted chest, sealed by a wrought iron lock. Within that chest lies the Codex of Textiles, Lon Van whispered. Legends say it contains formulas for dye, weaving patterns, and prayers of protection. If we can restore its contents, we might help villages far beyond ours. Anne's pulse quickened, but the lock is rusted shut. How do we open it? Lon Van produced a slender iron key that had once belonged to Rang Xas village treasurer. This key was passed down to me by my grandfather. He survived the plague and vowed to preserve these secrets for someone worthy. With a trembling hand, Lon Van slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grinding click. The lid creaked open, revealing a single scroll of parchment bound in leather, embossed with pastel stripes barely visible through grime. Carefully, and unrolled it. The codex's pages contain detailed diagrams of weaving looms, step-by-step instructions for combining pastel pink and blue threads in precise patterns, as well as prayers to be woven into each bolt for protection. Marginal notes in a delicate hand read, "Wear this for your neighbor. Let this cloth guard your village. May the roosters guide your heart." An's voice shook as he read. By crafting this cloth, one bonds body and spirit to the living rooster's vigilance, straw's embrace. The plague finds no purchase. Lanvin watched tears form in An's eyes. Now we understand. The master weaver wove his faith into every thread, binding healing into the fabric itself. That tunic you wore, and it contained those prayers, those diagrams, those lines of power, and folded the scroll carefully, placing it in his chest. We must bring these instructions back to Tan Hoa, replicate the pattern, and distribute the cloth to neighboring villages. Lan Van nodded. At dawn, we depart. Today, we'll rest in the old caretaker's cottage, then begin our return journey. As they rose from the crypt, the rustle of ghostly roosters echoed in the silence, like a final benediction from a departed master. Chapter 7. Return to Tan Hoa. At first light, An and Lan Van retraced their steps across the misty fields toward their home village. The codex, wrapped in oiled cloth, secured under An's arm, was the promise of a new dawn for the region. The countryside was hushed, aside from the soft coo of doves in the steeple of a distant chapel and the faint chirp of sparrows at the weaving cottage they passed. Back at the riverside levee, villagers were already lining up again, but not to pass buckets this time. Instead, they gathered around simple cotton frames and dye vats, and unrolled the codex on a wooden crate, passing out freshly woven skeins of pastel threads in pink and blue. The village's new apprentice weavers, eager youth who had never dared venture into weaving before, inhaled sharply at the sight of these precious, sacred threads. Tam and I stood nearby, offering herbal tea to anyone who came for a closer look. Several neighbors wove squares of cloth, following An's instructions. Weave one pastel stripe of pink, then two of blue, repeating. Each stripe must be 5 finger breadths wide. Keep your heart calm. Let the roosters in your mind watch over the warp. Little by little, pastel cloth began to bloom across wooden looms. Bolts of pastel herringbone pattern, pastel pinstripe pattern, pastel crosshatch pattern. The air was thick with the tang of dye, crushed indigo for blue, crushed madder root for pink. As each piece of cloth emerged damp, villagers laid them to dry on bamboo racks facing the sun, and walked along the line, encouraging each weaver, hold the thread wholeheartedly. Let your prayers infuse it. This is more than fabric. This is hope woven into every fiber. When the first bolts of cloth dried to a soft pastel glow, and gathered them and beckoned the villagers to form another human chain, this time passing bundles of viewing cloth instead of buckets of water, they distributed the protective cloth across 4 neighboring villages: Vong Lai Lan, Tui Sun, Sunjia, and ultimately back to Rang Exe. Wherever the pastel cloth was draped over door frames, hung in doorways, or stitched into garments, the villagers reported feeling a sudden calm in their hearts, as if a watchful hen had taken flight above them, glimmering in golden light. As night fell, not a single new case of disease arose in any of the villages that wore the pastel cloth. Word of this miracle spread like wildfire throughout the region. Back in Tan Hoa, at the square before the old barn, the entire village held a festival at dusk. Bamboo torches cast a flickering glow on the throng, and stood on a simple raised platform, wearing his cherished pastel-striped tunic. The codex sat on a small wooden altar behind him. He addressed the gathered crowd. My friends, today we celebrate not only the end of disease, but the power of unity and faith. When our neighbors in Rang Exe fell into despair, this cloth, woven with the Master's prayers, gave us a path forward. Let its pastel stripes remind us that even in the harshest winter, we can weave hope and protection through our communities. I am grateful to share this blessing with every household here. As his words settled over the crowd, the villagers cheered and lit more torches, pressing pastel cloths to their hearts in solemn gratitude. Overhead, roosters crowed from coops nearby in a chorus as if paying homage to An and the Master Weaver's legacy. Tam and I stood at his side, faces bright with pride. Their mother wiped tears from her cheeks as she handed out steaming bowls of chicken porridge to anyone still hungry. An's father, with a gentle smile, patted his son's shoulder. You have honored our family's humble roots, he said. Your courage carried the flame of hope through our darkest days. An's gratitude swelled. Beneath the glow of torchlight, he bowed deeply in front of the altar. To every sister and brother who passed a basket of water, every mother and father who donated herbs, and every child who held a pastel thread, you are the true guardians of our village. May we never forget this bond. Chapter 8. A New Dawn for the Weavers. In the weeks that followed, the so-called Pastel Weaving Guild sprang to life in Tanhoa and neighboring hamlets. Villagers who had never touched a loom formed apprentice groups. Elder weavers, some who had fled Rang Xe, returned to teach the ancient craft, weaving protective patterns into every garment they created, and served as guild master, his role less a position of power than a guardian of knowledge. He ensured that all families received a modest supply of pastel cloth so that no household would remain unprotected. One sunny morning, a group of school children, aged 7 to 12, gathered at the guild hall, an open-air pavilion draped in pastel banners, and stood patiently as each child placed a single straw of pastel thread into their spindle for spinning. A boy named Min turned to him with wide eyes. "Surin, do you think the pastel stripes will protect me if I get sick?" And smiled and knelt to Min's level. "These stripes carry the prayers of our ancestors, the faith of our neighbors, and the courage of farmers who shared water along a levee. Yes, they will protect you, as long as you remember to weave your own hope into them." The boy nodded solemnly and returned to his spinning wheel. All around them, children wove bolts of pastel fabric that fluttered in the spring breeze. The guild hall soon brimmed with bolts of cloth in pastel pink and blue patterns, each piece a living testament to the community's faith and resilience. Tam, who had become the guild's head scribe, recorded every pattern and prayer verse in a new illuminated codex. She sketched roosters, ripe straw sheaves, and stylized rice grains in gold leaf margins, ensuring that future generations would benefit from this knowledge. Mai, now a respected herbalist, opened a small apothecary at the edge of the guild hall. She specialized in potions and salves made from the region's medicinal plants, ginger, dandelion, mugwort. And from that day forward, she began stitching tiny pastel symbols into each jar's label, symbolizing protection. Anne's mother tended her own modest weaving loom in the corner of the family's modest home, weaving pastel cloth into strips that she then sold at the market for a handful of coins. These coins, traded for rice and salt, helped fund the guild's expansion. She would often pause in her weaving, gaze out at the sunrise, and say a silent prayer of thanks for her son's safe return from fever. Anne's father joined the guild as its first apprentice blacksmith. Though he had always worked the fields, he now hammered simple loom parts, shuttles, heddles, and heddle rods from wrought iron. His steady, rhythmic hammering rang through the courtyard as he forged each piece, knowing that each iron rod he crafted would help someone's weaving stand strong through many seasons. Between the walls of the guild hall, and prepared lesson plans for aspiring weavers. Each evening, as the sky turned tangerine, he would gather everyone for a demonstration: how to weave the standard pastel striped pattern, how to adjust tension on the warp threads, how to mix crushed indigo and madder root dyes to achieve the perfect pastel hues. His voice would rise and fall in gentle cadences. Place one pink thread, then two blue threads. Adjust your shuttle so that it oscillates smoothly. Keep your wrist relaxed, and imagine the rooster's call guiding your hand. Let your breath follow the rhythm of your loom. So did the Pastel Weaving Guild thrive. Soon, pillows and shawls woven in pastel patterns began to appear along the dusty paths of other villages. Travelers who once feared leaving their homes now wore pastel-dyed scarves as talismans. Parents tucked pastel patches into their children's collars as they headed off to school. The memory of the plague lingered, but the threat seemed to recede whenever villagers wove or touched those pastel threads.